Hello, everybody. Welcome to DC Spotlight for the week of June 21st, 2022. It's a Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. Rocky and I are coming to you with deep dives on all the DC books that come out this week. So, as always, if you haven't read the books this week and you don't want to be spoiled, probably should pause the podcast or the YouTube video, go read the books, and then come back. I thought it was an above average week. I thought for the most part, with the exception of one book that I really didn't like. I thought everything was pretty outstanding. How about you, Rocky?
I was much better than last week. I agree. I actually this week put a smile on my face. I enjoyed the vast majority of the books this week, except for one, and I think we both probably have the same stinker in mind. But this was one of the better weeks for DC. So yeah, I'm looking forward to talking about them.
Yeah, and before we dive into the books, we have to send our condolences to the family and friends of Tim Sale. We mentioned last DC Spotlight that we were sending our best wishes for recovery to Tim, who had been hospitalized with what was described as a serious illness. I haven't really seen any details. I haven't really gone looking, to be honest. It's not really my business. So I don't know, what he passed away from other than it was an illness. Jim Lee was the first one I saw that posted about it early last week, that Sale was in the hospital with a serious illness. So unfortunately, he succumbed to whatever illness that he had. Very, very sad. This one hit me, I have to be honest, it hit me a little harder than George Perez or Neil Adams. Adams was 80, and I know these days that's not super old. And we knew that George Perez, had chosen not to have any more treatment for his cancer and was in palliative care. And so, you knew the end was going to come sooner than later. But Tim Sale, he was only 67. And I feel like it was far too soon. And on another note, I'd met George Perez several times, but never really had a chance to have any in-depth conversations, mostly because George was always inundated with a giant line or was busy talking to other creators, and I would just, say hi, as opposed to Tim Sale, who I had, some longer conversations with. And we always talked about having him on the show. I'm really disappointed we never made that happen, but we've lost far too many amazing creators lately. And for whatever reason, the loss of Tim Sale it really hurts. Anytime we lose anybody, obviously it's sad, but for this one, it just hit me a little harder. So again, condolences to his friends, his family, his collaborators, his coworkers. It's a big loss. So our best to his family. Anything to add there, Rocky?
Yeah, I would add. One thing about Tim Sale is while, if I'm honest, while it never quite hit me like the George Perez or necessarily Neil Adams, the fact of the matter is that it probably should have, because if I'm brutally honest, Tim Sale's works mean more to me. I think I own every single hardcover that Tim Sale, every Jeff Loeb and Tim Sale collaboration, from Daredevil Yellow to Superman, Superman over all seasons, to Spider-Man Blue to Hulk Gray. I own the hardcovers of all of them. I own the hardcovers of Catwoman When in Rome. I've owned the hardcover of Long Halloween, and when they came out, he defined a generation. We all have memories. All of us who've collected long, and even newer collectors, we have memories of his work, his art. He redefined. He had such a unique style, and it's the forever memories that he brought to comic books. And it's funny. He's been involved in TV. He just in the last year, we reviewed one of his DC published one of his collaborations. He did a sequel to The Long Halloween that we reviewed, I think, last year. But for the most part, he's been sort of doing his TV collaborations, I think, with Jeff Loeb. So he's sort of been off the comic book radar, at least for the most part, over the last decade. And but reflecting on it, it's just, it really is a really sad loss. And I don't know why he passed or how he passed, but I hope, I certainly give his condolences to his family, and, God bless his soul, man. He definitely entertained us.
Yeah, he did that. And To be honest, this is what's so interesting, because I feel he's lost a little more. I wasn't the biggest fan of his style. Um, I haven't read everything that he did. Obviously, Long Halloween. Um, so what is it? Superman for Tomorrow.
Yeah, for all,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
yeah,
for all seasons.
for all seasons. That's it. Yeah, those are probably the two that spoke to me the most. I have Daredevil Yellow and uh, what is it, Hulk Gray and those, but I don't know. They never really did a lot for me. Again, I wasn't the biggest fan of his style, but the man was super humble, especially for kind of the profile that he had, and always really really great with fans. It was just fun to talk to. He loved comics, so to me, that's kind of where the loss is. But no doubt that he had a big impact. His style was, I feel, um, although I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoyed Darwin Cook's style, I feel like his style was similar in that it really boiled down to the essence of the character, a little bit more of a simple style that could really convey what's really wonderful about comics. And now it's like, man, we've lost Darwin Cook, we've lost Tim Sale. Um, I don't know, like I guess Doc Shaner is kind of in that camp now. That sort of more innocent looking feel of comics, but yeah, it's feels like it's a little bit of a dying breed. But anyway, on to more positive things. As Rocky and I both mentioned, really really great week of comics. So let's go ahead and dive right in. First book we're going to talk about in detail is Batman the Knight, #6. This is written by Chip Zdarsky. Art and cover by Carmine Di Giandomenico. Colors are by Ivan Placencia. Lettered by Pat Barroso. Uh, Again, I go back to the fact that this is only a 12-issue series, and it does give me a lot of hope. I'm very much anticipating the Batman run that Zdarsky is about to undertake. But this is #6 of 10. I think I just said 12. There's only 10 issues for this Batman the Knight. And what I find myself thinking is, I want this to be an ongoing. We've said it before, because it's such an interesting look. It's so intimate, right? Like when we first heard about this Batman the Knight series, where Zdarsky was going to go and explore Bruce and his journey around the world when he was training to become Batman, and it was sort of going to be the quintessential story of that journey. You figured if it's only going to be 10 or 12 issues, that it was going to have to move along pretty quickly and be kind of this broad overview, where Bruce was in multiple locations each issue, training, and getting the knowledge that he needed to become Batman. It's been much more intimate, much more of an intimate story than that, and really more emotional. I'm glad that it is, because I think emotionality and injecting a story with a lot of emotion is where Zdarsky's work really separates from others. It may be why some of the other things he did in the past that were more focused on humor, like Howard the Duck, didn't really work for me, because I feel like this is where his wheelhouse is. And in this particular issue, Bruce has a falling out with the guy that he has been training with, Anton, um, because it gets to a point where Bruce realizes that Anton isn't the guy he wants him to be, and you get the feeling. And again, I give a lot of credit to Zdarsky for conveying this really well through language, and Di Giandomenico does a very good job visually of portraying it as well. You get the sense when this, I don't want to call it a betrayal, because Anton really is only ever who Anton was. Bruce doesn't want to believe it, and he wants to believe the best of Anton, but you can see in the kind of the pacing and the language choice that Zdarsky uses, as well as the visual from Di Giandomenico, that Bruce kind of knew all along that Anton is who he is. And that's not somebody that Bruce wants him to be. Bruce wants Anton to be more of a kindred spirit, right? Somebody that wants to fight crime and not kill, and is going to have the same values that Bruce has. Because for the first time in this journey, when he met Anton, he found somebody that wanted to fight crime just like he did. And he sort of, I feel in a lot of ways, Bruce projected his desires onto Anton and tried to put Anton in the same box so he could feel like he wasn't alone. And that's really what this issue is about, because in the end, after this, for lack of a better word, betrayal, after Anton is true to himself, and Bruce isn't particularly surprised by it, although he's hurt by it. At the end, he talks about how alone he is again. Certainly, when you talk about alone and living an isolated existence, that certainly kind of jives with who Batman is. Although in recent year, last 10 years or whatever, the Bat family's gotten so big that I feel like that aspect of Batman has been lost a little bit to some extent, or if not lost, they try to say it's there, but it's really like, how could Bruce ever possibly be alone when he has 75 sidekicks at this point? It doesn't
Yeah.
work. It's why I kind of wish for a contraction of the Bat family. Um, and that's not to say that because I like that aspect of Batman working alone, and that's not to say I want to diminish or dismiss any of the characters, because I know everybody's somebody's favorite, Duke or Stephanie Brown or whatever. Those characters, they don't really do much for me, but they do speak to others. So I get it. But at the end of the day, I like being able to go back and read stories like this set in the past where Bruce, before all that, right, where he is alone, or things like Batman Damned, or I think Lee Bermejo, speaking of Batman Damned, has a new project coming up with DC where it's Batman in the past, or Black Label books where he's by himself. But anyway, I thought this was a fantastic issue. I thought you could see it coming a mile away. Anton was never the guy that Bruce wanted him to be, but it was brutal seeing it. And I'll let Rocky, if he wants to recap a little more and talk about what Anton does. It's just brutal and cold hearted, and it definitely something Bruce sort of needed, right? Because as much as he's Batman and wants to fight crime or whatever, this is another lesson he learned that he needed to learn. You don't, when you're Batman, Bruce is on this journey to become Batman. You don't have the luxury of your delusions, or the luxury of your idealized version of who people will be. You got to face reality, and Bruce is shocked back into reality by a bullet, which in a lot of ways works so ironically well, considering it was the shock of a bullet or bullets that killed his parents that set him on this journey to begin with. So there's some nice symmetry there.
Yeah.
So yeah, the art, I'm not the biggest fan of Dijon Domenico. I've talked about it before in his work on the Flash, just because his style is a little loose. But again, I think he does a fantastic job setting the tone and the mood and those facial expressions when Bruce is kind of struggling once he realizes that Anton is who he doesn't want him to be. It works really, really well. The other thing that I like about this, the art in this issue, is for a lot of the panels, there's no border. And I think it helps to show that this is in the past, and that works really well also. Anyway, what are your thoughts, Rocky?
Yeah. It's interesting because one of the ongoing questions is Anton actually the Ghostmaker? Will Anton return as the Ghostmaker? Is Anton the Ghostmaker? And at the end of this issue, and you alluded to so many interesting aspects, great character work this issue, I'm starting to question as to whether maybe Anton isn't the Ghostmaker. Because
I don't think he is.
yeah, he might very well be a different character because we know that Ghostmaker was a killer, but he's given up his murderous ways to help Batman, and Ghostmaker's now leading Batman Incorporated, and in fact is all about not killing now. He's embracing Batman's philosophy. So it is possible that Anton will become Ghostmaker, but I'm starting to wonder now if Anton is in fact a different character, because we do know that Chip Zdarsky is the new writer of Batman, and we haven't read his first official issue of Batman yet. But it's going to be interesting to see if he's utilizing that sort of misdirection. People are assuming Anton is Ghostmaker, but maybe that's not the case. The work here is really good because Anton and Bruce Wayne they approaching this guy. The next person to train both Bruce Wayne and Anton is a guy by the name of Luca Jango, and he's otherwise known as the Swiss Mark, and he's a marksman, and he's got a very sort of like a tropey background insofar as, well, he used to be a marksman, he used to be a hitman, and he worked for different countries, and he sort of abandoned that life because Luca wanted to get out of that life. And the only reason he is going to be he agrees to train Bruce Wayne and and Anton is because of they got of who referred them to him, and so he agrees to help them out. And what's very interesting here, and I'm not gonna be as detailed as I sometimes am on this. I just want people to enjoy this story for what it is, because I think there's some great character work. You're right that Sardasky and the does a great job here scripting the evolution, Bruce Wayne's growing realization, uh, of which he was heretofore willfully blind as to Anton's true nature. Anton is a killer, and Anton even he's. I mean, it's just so sad because he's trained. Luca trains them both on how to kill animals, and near the end, there's a moment where he kills a deer by shooting it in the neck as opposed to the brain like Luca taught him. So he he couldn't even do something as killing an animal painlessly. His instincts was to just create misery and pain for even an animal. And if you can't do that, there's always that. It's sort of, maybe it's a little cliche, but it's sort of like the young child that grows up torturing animals. It's probably not a good sign for mental health in adulthood. So it's not a great thing, but even Luca himself, Bruce Wayne realizes Luca's instincts, which he questioned from the beginning. Luca at the end, much to his dismay, knows that Anton is a killer and will have none of it. And it culminates with the three of them having a face-off, and it's quite a poignant and powerful ending that ultimately leads to Anton and Bruce Wayne essentially going their separate ways. And it's sad, and it's because I think both Anton and Bruce were looking for kindred souls. Anton was looking for someone who thought like he did, and so is Bruce Wayne, but they're different. And Anton, of course, has a little bit more of that inclination toward lethal force, whereas Bruce Wayne is the complete reverse of that. And yet, in so many ways, they got so much in common. But that lethal force, that inclination to go that extra step to kill, is such it there's such a fine line between killing and not killing. Just like it's only a couple inches between shooting an animal in the neck versus the brain. There's the slightest change of character, the slightest movement of a fist, the slightest change of an aim from a gun can mean the difference between taking somebody out versus letting them live but still incapacitating them. And that fine distinction is what, of course, ultimately defines Batman and sets him apart from so many of his fellow villains and anti-heroes who might match him in skill, but they have a very different moral uh, mentality. But this is I really enjoyed this issue, and I'm now excited for the fact that maybe Anton is not Ghostmaker, and I'm actually kind of hoping he isn't, and that he ends up showing up in Chip Zdarsky's Batman's. I'd be quite curious to see that.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the link is there, and you can't help but think when he first showed up, oh, could this be Ghostmaker? But just based on his personality, I never thought that it was. But I don't know. You could think of it as a bit problematic. I've talked about this in the past, where we go back and do these retcons and explore people's origins, and you add so much stuff in there. At some point, it becomes ludicrous. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I don't feel like Zdarsky here is um, contradicting anything that's come before, or adding something that just doesn't make sense, as opposed to Rogol Zar and what Brian Michael Bendis did. So I feel like this works a little better, but I guess we'll see who Anton is at some point. But yeah, don't think he's Ghostmaker, but I guess we'll see. All right, up next we have Black Adam #1, 12-issue limited series, I believe. It's written by Christopher Priest. Rafa Sandoval does the art. Matt Herms on colors. Willie Schubert on lettering. Obviously, the timing of this with the movie coming out, you almost think they would have it come out a little bit later in the year, closer to when the movie's coming out. But they will have a Black Adam series on the stands when the movie's in theaters. So, what'd you think of this?
I like this. Upon first reading it, I had some mixed feelings. Because, well, I'll just say it, but because I ended up changing my mind upon a reread, and because I thought at first I was a little bit frustrated that the central conceit of this story is that Black Adam, we know, it ultimately ends up sharing his powers with someone else. And the concept of that kind of bothered me. I didn't like that idea. But upon reading this, I actually came to I like what writer Christopher Priest has done here, and and Rafa Sandoval on the art is that does a really good job. And essentially, what the premise of this story and what I think actually works for me and I find very interesting is we come across it opens up with Teth Adam essentially at a meeting of an OFAC meeting, which is a U.S. Office of Foreign Assets Control. He's dealing with United Nations with international negotiations and treaties, et cetera, et cetera. It's the part of being I guess, the leader of Kandak that you can tell Teth Adam is not a big fan of, but he's a knowledgeable leader. He displays Christopher Priest has Teth Adam displaying a good amount of intelligence as a leader, but at the same time he's kind of tired of it and bored of it. This is we get a flashback with Teth Adam fighting what looks to be ultimately ends up being revealed to be a fake dark side. And some great action sequences, beautifully drawn by Rafa Sandoval and Matt Herms on the color. The color work is really good, really great with Teth Adam taking out this fake dark side. Very well done, works very well. But it's discovered that in taking out this fake dark side, he ends up calling upon the lightning, saying Shazam, and upon the transformation, clearly there's a part of Black Adam that's burnt. His body seems to be burnt or sort of like burning away, and something is wrong. Something is affecting his ability. He can call upon the lightning to make the transformation into Shazam, but he clearly appears to be dying or deteriorating in some way. And I think that artist Rafa Sandoval does a really good job here when he shows Black Lightning, or pardon me, Black Adam changing into back into Shazam. You can actually see the in the transformation. I'm trying to find a picture of it here for those watching on the chat, but on video. But it's almost as if his arm gets burnt. So the transformation is painful to him, and it's very difficult. Meanwhile, we then flash forward, and I believe we're in I think it's New York City, where Teth Adam Teth Adam is running for office. He I guess they have elections in Kandak, and there's a reform leader. The leader of the reform movement in Kandak is this individual by the name of Shakur Nasser. Shakur Nasser is the leader of the Democratic Reform Movement in Kandak. Well, he ends up being murdered, and the last person that this Shakur Nasser visited was Black Adam's descendant by the name of Malik Adam White, and he's actually a med student. And what's interesting about that is you can infer from the storyline that the leader of this Democratic Reform Movement in Kandak, obviously they're the opposing political party to Teth Adam. It makes sense that they would try to maybe recruit the Malik Adam White, who is the descendant of Black Adam, to maybe help their cause and run against him politically. That's my guess here. I like what Christopher Priest has done. He's sort of introduced some international politics, some Middle Eastern politics and machinations, and he's made it very interesting. And meanwhile, but this Shakur Nasser is actually murdered, and we don't know who murdered him. But the last person apparently that the Shakur Nasser saw was this medical student, this Malik character, who is, again, the descendant of Black Adam. And Black Adam approaches him, and he approaches him in the hospital. And this Malik, I like the dialogue here. He's sort of a cocky, good-natured medical student who's sort of kind of pretending to be a doctor. He doesn't correct people when they think he's a doctor, but even though he's a smartass to Teth Adam, he notices that he's injured, because Teth Adam is injured because of his transformations into Black Adam, clearly has compromised him in some way. and there are, you can see he's bandaged up. It's almost like his body is being burned. And in any event, we end up meeting Malik's best friend, who he's got his best friend is named Jasmine, and he's sort of that's sort of he's in love with Jasmine, but she just wants to be best friends. So right away, Christopher Priest has established a potential love interest. He's established the international background here. He's established, I think, a really good foundation for the story. He's established what's at stake for Teth Adam, and it appears to be his connection to the power of Shazam. And and at the end, it's Black Teth Adam orchestrating what appears to be a kidnapping of his own descendant, Malik, to try to confront him and essentially offer him the legacy of Black Adam. So when it's suggested here at the end that basically Teth Adam, he believes he is dying, and he's offering Malik, who's his descendant, the power of Black Adam. He wants to bequeath it to Malik, his descendant. And I think that's very, very interesting. I also like the fact that because they're descendants. I like the fact that there's obviously over the thousands of years, Teth Adam was. I'm assuming he was kind of Egyptian or Arabic. I'm not really sure what his nationality was, but his descendant is actually black, or it would appear to be African American, or whatever exactly Malik is. But I like how the interplay of that, and I like how he wants to bequeath him with it. Now, I don't know enough. I got to read my Black Adam story. I didn't know. I thought the wizard still had the power over the lightning. I didn't think that Black Adam had the power to bequeath his lightning to somebody. I thought the wizard had some say in that, but I know that Shazam, Captain Marvel, can share his lightning with other members of the Marvel family. And so I assume that Black Adam could. I know Black Adam has shared his power of Shazam with Mary Marvel at one point, but I didn't think he could totally give it up to someone else before. But people in the chat or whatever can maybe correct me on that or fill in some of the details in the history of Black Adam. I'll probably look up Googling it later. But I find it very interesting here. This is a really great opening issue because it establishes some very high stakes for Black Adam. And it is worth noting that this takes place before the death of the Justice League in issue 75 of the Justice League. So, and because we know that Teth Adam did not have two minds, he wasn't merged with anyone when he fought against the Great Darkness in Justice League 75. Presumably this series ends, and can we assume that his Malik is not part of his consciousness? He's not merged with Malik. I'm assuming that because this takes place before Justice League 75, but who knows? So, anyways, I thought this was well done for an opening issue. And what do you think?
Yeah, I thought it was really, really well done also. Just because the first issue takes place before Justice League 75 doesn't mean the whole series does, so it'll be interesting to see if it does come into play. Obviously, we've seen some news articles and whatnot talking about this new Black Adam, and I guess the solicits for 4 came out recently, and it's talking about a younger version of Black Adam, which is a reference to this character Malik. So we'll wait and see. One thing that Christopher Priest is known for is he's going to tell the story that he wants to tell. DC editorial knows. You ask Christopher Priest to tell a Black Adam story, he's not going to really, pull from things that are done before. His story's not going to be really derivative. He's going to do something, completely different and tell the story that he wants to tell, and that must be the direction they wanted to go. It's a little surprising to me because here we have Ted Adam, who is Black Adam, who's the character The Rock is playing in the movie. And right here at the beginning of the first issue, we already say, we're going to kill that guy, and we're going to have this young kid as Black Adam. So I find that to be really interesting. I don't know that fans of the movie will be on board with that. But one of the things I do like, as much as the art by Rafa Sandoval is fantastic, I really appreciate the fact that he didn't draw Black Adam to look like The Rock, which I really dislike when they do that. Again, it's DC multiverse. The Black Adam movies, just think of it as a different, part of the multiverse as this. But you are going to have people that pick up this comic based on the movie and go, how come he doesn't look like The Rock? So I'm a fan of Black Adam. I think that Christopher Priest who did a fantastic job on Deathstroke, is a really good writer to take on Black Adam, because again, Black Adam is not a hero, and he's not a villain, and he's not even an anti-hero. Black Adam cares about himself, and he cares about his country of Kandak, and that's it. Um, and so I appreciate when he's in sort of his civilian identity here, Lord Theo, as he wants to be called. That's what he's on. That's what he's looking out for. So that felt very authentic to me. So I liked him beating Darkseid too before we knew it was Darkseid. Although I did, have a thought. Well, Black Adam, man, Christopher Priest is making him really powerful. He's able to take out Darkseid on his own. Then we find out it's an illusion, and then he injured his hand during that battle, and that must be, that's how I took it anyway. That's why he's saying he's dying. I mean, did this illusion or what have you have some sort of anti-life equation? And because at the moment he punched Darkseid in the chest, he yelled out Shazam, transformed into his human form. Was he infected? Was he vulnerable at that point? But yeah, I like the story. I like the fact that he doesn't worry about his injury too much, because that's the arrogance of Tet Adam. And, he transforms to Black. Oh, I got this. I'll heal myself real fast. I'll just transform into Black Adam. He transforms. Doesn't make a difference. He's still dying. It's a great start. If you're not familiar with Christopher Priest's style, it can be jarring at times. It has everything to do with the pace at which Priest wants to tell his story. And he doesn't always tell it in a linear fashion, or at least he didn't in Deathstroke. There were a lot of flashbacks. This one, it gets a little choppy at times. But for the most part, I mean, we do get the flashback of the fight against Darkseid, but for the most part, it's a pretty linear story. But you do get some small time jumps, and you can tell when there's a jump, because you've got the thing that Christopher Priest is known for, just a plain black panel with a description of the location. For example, when we switch from the crime scene where Shakur Nassar was found killed, to the hospital, says the Newsboy, Metro East Emergency Department, Washington D.C. So that's a very typically Priest thing to do. I think he started doing it when he was writing Quantum and Woody for Valiant, and then he continued it. Most people know it from his Black Panther run at Marvel, and then obviously he's continued ever since. Well, I should say he's continued to do it in Deathstroke, and when he came back to write a little bit of Quantum and Woody at Valiant. I don't know if he does it for like his Vampirella or whatever. I don't read any of that Dynamite stuff, but anyway, yeah, I thought he was a good choice. I've known this was coming for a while, actually. When Christopher was on the show last time, we got to talking after we stopped recording, and we were talking about Black Adam a little bit. He mentioned that he was going to be taking him on. So I've been looking forward to this for a long time. I'm glad it's out there now and we can talk about it. So I thought it was a fantastic start. Okay, yeah. Up next we have Batman Superman World's Finest #4. Did you have anything else to add, Rocky, about Black Adam?
No, that's it. It's fine.
Okay, gotcha. All right, so #4, speaking of great comics, I love what Mark Waid has been doing in this story. We talked about how he's tying it in with some things that have come from other writers. The art by Dan Morris, fantastic. Tamra Bonvillain does the colors. Aditya Bidikar on letters. So this, specifically tying it into what's happened on Lazarus Island and what Joshua Williamson's been doing in the Robin series with this demon, Master Nezha, who has basically possessed. Starts out at the beginning of the issue, he's possessed a lot of the members of the Justice League, including Green Lantern and John Jones and Firestorm, Donna Troy, Red Tornado, Martian Manhunter, Kid Flash, which is interesting. It's the Wally West version of Kid Flash in his old school yellow and red costume, like back when he wore. So I thought that was interesting because obviously he's Flash now, but story must be in the past or what have you. Black Canary's there as well. So I thought that was a lot of fun, and it feels very classic. And I'm not surprised. It's probably a story that Mark Waid's wanted to tell for a long, long time, which maybe is why some of these characters are their old versions. Because for that matter, it's the old version of Firestorm as well, or appears to be. the Ronnie Raymond, Professor Martin Stein version, as opposed to the Jason Rush version, who appears as African American. Um, but either way, it's just such a fun story, and it's been really fast paced, and just had a big cast of characters. And right from the first issue, we had Doom Patrol, we had Superman Weekend, and it's just been a lot of fun. So in this particular issue, as I mentioned, Green Lantern being possessed by Nezhu, and fighting for him, and there's this point where Batman and Superman are hiding behind a construct that the Philosopher's Stone has conjured up, that Batman's been able to conjure to protect them from Green Lantern's attack. But Batman said, hey, it's not going to hold out forever. The Philosopher's Stone's going to crumble. We're going up against Hal Jordan. He's got the strongest willpower, of anybody, stronger than me, stronger than you. He's talking to Superman when he says this. He's like, but maybe not stronger than both of us together, right? And so basically what Bruce says to Clark is, we have to try to combine our willpower, right? Like think the same thought and concentrate on it. And what they concentrate on is to pull the ring, literally pull the ring off of Hal Jordan's finger, and have it on, go onto their finger. And, they're two people. How can it? Well, no, they're not two people when they manage to do that. And they manage to pull the ring off and it goes on their finger, but they've been combined. And we've seen this image in previews, and DC was even doing a little bit of marketing. Hey, don't miss Batman Superman World's Finest #4. It's the first appearance of this new hero. And based on the symbol, what I thought was this was going to be one of the heroes from the past, the group that Supergirl and Robin had gone back to talk to.
The Warriors of G. The Warriors of G.
Yeah, the Warriors of G. I thought it was going to be one of them. I had no idea it was going to be this Batman Superman hybrid, or Batman Superman hybrid with the power of Green Lantern. I mean, it is awesome. It's such a fantastic moment. It's like one of those holy shit, really cool comic book moments. And it's like, as soon as I saw this, and it's a beautiful full page splash from Dan Mora, and Mark Waid's smart enough to get out of Mora's way and not put a single word on the page, just give us this beautiful splash. I couldn't help but think of one of my favorite episodes of the Super Friends cartoon from back in the day. They're like trapped in space, and there's like kryptonite around, so Superman can't save them, and Green Lantern is there, and he's got them all in this bubble, even Superman, to protect him from the green kryptonite radiation. And there's nobody except Superman who can move the bubble out and get them back to Earth. But Superman can't go out there because he'll be killed by the kryptonite. And so Green Lantern uses his ring to merge himself and Superman together. And in the cartoon, it's that as they merge, in the cartoon, they shift back and forth. Like for a second, it looks like Green Lantern. Then in the next second, it looks like Superman. It goes back and forth, back and forth. This is what reminded me of that. Obviously, this is Batman thrown in there. We got Batman, Superman with Green Lantern's powers. But it was just such a fantastic moment and so much fun. And I just thought it was awesome. Plus, Supergirl gets to make kind of a heroic rescue, because even though they're this powerful, with Superman, Batman merge with the power of Green Lantern's ring. The ring, as we know, has a finite charge. Again, going back to classic DC lore that Mark Waid's well known for. So they start running out of power in the middle of fighting Nezha, and Supergirl comes to the rescue with the knowledge that she got from the Warriors of G, that, hey, we've got to lock this being, we've got to lock Nezha back in his tomb, but the door can only be shut permanently from the other side. So someone's going to have to go in there and make the sacrifice, just like one of the Warriors of G did back in the day. Like, that's the mystery, right? That's why Tim Drake, Robin, and Supergirl went back in time. Or was it Damian? That was Tim Drake, right?
No, it's I think it's Dick Grayson. It's Dick Grayson.
Oh, Dick Grayson. That's right. Dick Grayson. Yeah. Again, a much younger Dick Grayson. So again, obviously this is in the past, but that was the whole reason that they went back. That him and Supergirl went back, because it was a mystery of how these Warriors of G were able to defeat Nezha way back in the day. And apparently this isn't like a permanent solution, because it seems like Nezha would be able to do the same thing that he did this time to break out, which basically it took him, thousands and thousands of years, and there is no magical spell to free him from his prison. So he created one. He said he had to create it syllable by syllable, and it literally took him thousands of years. So at least they can lock him up, and maybe you set a reminder on the calendar, a couple days before, hey, let's go lock this guy back down again. But either way, Mark Waid's weaving a lot of really, really great ideas together. And I mean, to me, the price of admission is worth it just for that image, just for that moment when Superman and Batman merged together. And I think, did they give themselves a name? I thought they gave themselves a name.
Oh, I missed that if they did.
I thought somebody referred to, or they might have referred to themselves as something, but I don't see it now. But anyway, it was a fantastic moment, and it brought a big smile to my face. So, and yeah, the Dan Mora art is really fantastic. So, what were your thoughts on it?
This is the way comic books should be written. I mean, Mark Waid is actually taking every single DC writer presently to school in terms of how to write a good comic book story, action packed, and this is even character based. There's even some character progression here, but he knows these characters so well. He just does such a fantastic job, and it's fun. And not only that, he's got fun with the strategy of it as well. Like, I like the way he choreographs the fights. He's got Batman and Superman thinking as they're fighting, and they're thinking tactically and strategically. Even the whole idea of, for Batman to think that, look, you're never going to have more willpower. Individually, they don't have more willpower than Hal Jordan. And in fact, even combined, they doubted they had the willpower to overcome Hal Jordan. But it's because Hal Jordan is being mind controlled by the demon Nezha that further compromises Hal Jordan. So it was a strategic, it was a strategy. Well, okay, maybe Hal's not it's not his A game. So let's get the ring away from him. And god damned if it didn't work. And then just the way they had to battle the other heroes, and how Batman and Superman, with Superman's body, you could almost tell like they're merged, and they're using Batman strategizing, while maybe Superman is utilizing the superpower of the body and Batman's strategic intellect. And while they got the power of the Green Lantern, and they're taking on Kid Flash, Black Canary, Firestorm, Wonder Girl, Martian Manhunter, Red Tornado. This was just fun. And in the meantime, we got Supergirl and Dick Grayson in the past talking to the Warriors of G, where they find out the information they need to entomb. They got to entomb the demon Nezha back in his tomb in Corto Maltese. And in order to do that, Supergirl and Robin try to fly back to the present, and they get separated. So Robin is lost in time somewhere. Supergirl makes it back in time just to save Superman and Batman in their Green Lantern iteration, and she manages to, at least temporarily, seem to incapacitate the demon Nezha. And we know that a sacrifice is going to have to be made, because whoever entombs the demon Nezha again, you're going to have to sacrifice yourself and lock his tomb from the inside, and in such a way that he doesn't escape like he did last time by over many, many thousands of years. But just really great. I'm really curious to know more about the Warriors of Xi. I'm very interested to see what exactly this character by the name of Zurhan was. A warrior of G. He was the one that sacrificed himself to lock himself inside the tomb. And yet, is he dead? Is he alive? Did he die in the tomb? We don't know. Maybe he's going to end up popping up. We don't know. But I really like what Waid has done here, having a lot of fun. And let's not forget that there's a possible linkage between the demon Nezha and Ra's al Ghul, the demon's head. And so maybe is the demon Nezha responsible for contaminating the Lazarus pits? And maybe that's why the Lazarus pits are poisoned. And what was the consequence of the poisoned, that with the Lazarus pits being compromised? Well, Deathstroke was resurrected by the Lazarus pits, and that's why he's fighting Nightwing and the rest of the heroes in Dark Crisis, at the end of Dark Crisis #1, where he ended up killing Changeling, seemingly. So it might be that all this storyline that Mark Waid has weaved so far is connected to a larger. I leave it to Mark Waid to connect it to the larger tapestry of the DC universe right now. So I'm loving this. Action-packed, fantastic art by Dan Mora. I mean, this is This is a tough one, but this is one of my favorites of the week.
Yeah, it's just really good. Again, that image of Superman Batman merged with the Green Lantern ring is, yeah, worth the price of admission, no doubt. All right, well, up next, I'm glad you have to go first on this one. Catwoman number 44. Tinny Howard does the story. Bengal on the art. Jordi Belair on colors. Tom Napolitano on letters. What'd you think? Did it work for you?
Um, well, I, uh, oh man. Okay, let me just get set up here. Well, the variant covers are really nice. Got a really beautiful Jenny Frison cover of the cardstock $4.99, and there's a fantastic cover C. It's probably the 1 in 25, which is particularly sexy. With it looks like Harley Quinn and Catwoman charging a hotel room to Bruce Wayne, and they're whooping it up, and there's rollerblades on the ground, and it's a gorgeous cover, gorgeous cover. Look, Teenie Howard continues the story here that was began last issue, where last issue we got the first what I have since been told, or you may have told me. I think you told me last issue that we reviewed that Red Claw is actually a character from the animated Batman universe.
Yep.
Which I wasn't aware of, or if I did, I don't remember. But she ends up Red Claw here is essentially hired by the Black Mask to take out Selina, because Black Mask is really, really pissed off at Selina. We know because Selina humiliated him, defeated him. Now the Black Mask has been told by the other 4 crime families of Gotham to, look, we're not going to kill Selina. You betrayed us. Stay. You're basically. I mean, Black Mask is not supposed to have any power, but there's one other member of the one of the crime families is still, for whatever reason, seems to have some reasons to want to listen to Black Mask to send an assassin, this Red Claw, to take out Selina. And meanwhile, while Red Claw is attacking Selina in this roller derby, this entire issue sort of, it takes place. Teenie Howard's the writer, Bengal on the art. The art here is a little bit wonky. I don't know, the art. I didn't mind it so much last issue. This issue, it seemed like maybe one issue was enough for me. On the art, I don't know. Again, art is subjective, so all the power to people who like it. There is a dynamism to the art, and he's Bengal is on the art is pretty good at conveying action. I just I would have liked to have been a little bit more sexy and a little bit more. It's not quite my style, but Selina and Harley, they have a lot of fun. The roller derby seem to be fun, and Red Claw, this is just Red Claw going crazy, wanting to kill Selina, and she's just gung-ho for it. Meanwhile, there's this other third character who's just been following Selina and Harley around, and it ends up that Selina thinks that maybe that Black Mask hired another person, this man that was following Selina around. Maybe he was also hired to take them out. This really offends Red Claw. She gets really upset, because this Red Claw here, you could tell she doesn't like men. Red Claw doesn't like men, and they're against this third guy who was just sort of like a stalker of Selina. Red Claw ends up essentially, causing a bunch of havoc, following Selina and Harley around. There's a huge car chase. They leave the roller derby, and there's lots of action. This is definitely like the road trip from hell for Selina and Harley. And there's action, and they manage to defeat Red Claw, but then they end up befriending Red Claw because Red Claw gets all upset at this other third guy who's been following them. She resents the fact that Black Mask would hire somebody else. She feels insulted that, why would you hire more than one hit person when you have me? And it's what seems off to me on this series is Red Claw is trying to brutally murder and literally at times to burn to death Selina, burn her to death with a flamethrower in a roller derby, and then literally kill her by smashing into her, and these are women that are literally trying to kill each other. I mean, Selena and Harley are trying to defend themselves against Red Claw, but this Red Claw is a brutal killer. And then at the end, it's writer Teeny Howard tries to suggest that I guess the really bad guy is this this stalker, this white guy who is just following Selena around because he's creepy, he's a stalker. So yeah, he's probably maybe he is creepy, but you know, to suggest that, Red Claw's all upset, because Black Mask hates women. And then the message is, he hates women. And Selena tells Red Claw, you know what? If he hates women, and so if Black Mask hired you, I bet you if you were a man, he'd have paid you more. That's kind of the message. And it ends with Red Claw, Selena, and Harley continuing their road trip, all happy. There's a scene with, there's an ending scene. They're driving back to Gotham. Selena's driving, Red Claw and Harley in the back seat. Like all is seemingly forgiven, and they're driving back to Gotham. And it just seems like it's just very, very hard to believe. This does not possess, even within the insanity of the DC universe, I find this doesn't really possess that magic word, that verisimilitude. But it is fun and crazy. But at the same time, I thought it was a little heavy-handed with the, Black Hand hates. I mean, Black Hand and Dr. Psycho over in Wonder Woman, they definitely have one thing in common. They hate women. They resent women. They're misogynist. Yeah, we get it. That message was loud and clear here again. I thought it was a little heavy-handed, and I really enjoyed. I thought Teeny Howard did a good job ending Catwoman's defeat of the Black Mask. I thought that was well played, and we know that Black Mask is a sick person and obviously misogynist. But I thought this was a little heavy-handed here, and this Red Claw, the fact that she's not incarcerated or apprehended, and then they end up dropping off this guy. They deliver this other guy who's just a stalker. Now, again, stalking is bad, don't get me wrong, but they end up dropping the stalker off to Black Mask, pissing off Black Mask. And they got to know that this stalker is probably going to be killed by Black Mask. But meanwhile, they don't deliver back Red Claw, who was hired to kill them. I thought I didn't buy that for a second. And I realize that this is a female empowerment comic in some respects because it is Catwoman. I get it. I just thought that was a little heavy-handed. But again, maybe I'm just nitpicking, but I mean, I had fun with it. I just thought, in terms of story, I thought they abandoned how the story ought to have concluded in the way it did. Were a little bit off to me. But what do you think?
Yeah, I didn't like it. First of all, the art. I'm not a fan of Bengal's style. It works on the right story. I think it was, Rick Remender that he did a story with called Glory, kind of the Road to Glory kind of thing. And she was into cars and whatever, and dad was a mechanic. That worked, right? With this kind of zany style that he gives us. But I think it's wrong for Catwoman. And maybe I'm just still stuck in the Rom V version, very crime noir. And to Tini Howard's credit, her first arc felt very crime noir and very slick. Thought the art worked really well, very neon. We talked about that kind of 80s Miami Vice style. And it's not that Bengal's art doesn't suit the tone of the story that she's telling here, because to me, last issue and this issue both, this shouldn't say Catwoman on the front. This should say Harley Quinn. This is a Harley Quinn comic. It's not a Catwoman comic. And in a Harley Quinn comic, you totally buy that, yeah, the villain is trying to kill Harley, on the first 5 pages, but by the end of the book, they're best friends, right? That's Harley. She's insane. She would do something like that. She would befriend somebody like that. I expect my Catwoman stories, and I expect a little more pragmatism from Selena. So you're 100% right. This doesn't have the ring of truth. I mean, we get this crazy villain who's super violent, trying to kill them with a flamethrower, Red Claw. And then by the end, they're best friends with this crazy zany art style and a roller derby in the middle. And Harley cracking her jokes about, oh, I got to go buy cheese sticks and appetizers and whatever. This is a Harley Quinn comic,
Yeah.
and
Well,
I
I mean, it
don't.
is funny to a little bit. I do chuckle. I mean, even as you say that, I'm chuckling as you say it because it does have a fun element to it, I think. But it, like you said, I'm sort of torn a little bit. But it's crazy, but it's also kind of nonsensical and wow, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah, and that's Harley. And typically I'm not a Harley Quinn reader. Stephanie Phillips has been doing a great job on Harley and has brought a little more grounded sensibility to the Harley title, and I've been enjoying it more. But this harkens back to before Stephanie Phillips run, where again I'm not a fan. Does Bengal's art style suit it? 100% it does. But I was a huge fan of what Ram V and Fernando Blanco did. I talked about the aesthetic and how it felt like the movie, a lot like the movie Heat or any other of the great movies that Michael Mann. He also did the movie with Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx, Collateral. It has a certain feel. It's very serious. It's very grounded. It's very real. This is miles and miles away from that. So credit to Teenie Howard for being very versatile in her writing style, because if this is what she set out to do, create a zany, fun Harley Selena road trip story, then 100% she has succeeded. That's just not a story that I'm going to enjoy. This is not for me. The art style is not for me. So here's hoping that once this is over, we can get back to a more grounded style of Catwoman stories where Selena's going up against the different crime families, or it's just a little more real. This is just a little too out there. I'm glad if people are chuckling and getting laughs out of it. Hey, more power to you. I don't read Catwoman to get laughs. I just don't. I don't really read Harley Quinn to get laughs either, but at least I would expect that humor to be in a Harley Quinn comic. I don't really expect humor in my Catwoman comics. I just don't. So that's just, again, a personal thing. Again, technically a well done comic. Bengal's storytelling is fantastic, always has been. I just don't prefer his line work. Again, it suits this zany, humorous story that they're telling. It's not a story that I'm enjoying. So anyway, apologies for making you go twice in a row first, Rocky, but we've talked about it last time. I don't read Fables, have never read Fables. So we have issue 152 of Fables. I didn't read this because, again, I have no context. So I'll give you a chance to talk about it. It's from writer-creator Bill Willingham. Mark Buckingham does the pencils. Steve Leah Aloha on inks. Lee Luffridge on colors. And Todd Klein on letters.
Yeah, let me see. It looks like I forgot to upload the picture on that, so I'll go back to my general. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so for fans of the Fables, this is issue 152 of the Fables. Fans of the Fables will know that when Fables first came out all those years ago, the primary villain was somebody known as the Adversary. And I think it was, I might stand to be corrected on this, and that's okay. For about 4 or 5 years, the big mystery was, who is the Adversary? Which fairy tale character was the big bad villain known as the Adversary? And ultimately, it was revealed to be Geppetto. Geppetto, the father of Pinocchio, he was revealed to be the great big bad adversary. And flash forward to the end of Fables, in issue 150, the adversary was ultimately defeated, and at the end of Fables, we had the death of Cinderella, the death of Tottenkinder, which was sort of like the Wicked Witch. And what's happened so far, what Bill Willingham is doing here, and what he's doing, he's setting the chess pieces in place on the story. And for longtime readers of Fables, you really enjoy it. I do think it could be a little bit more accessible for new readers like yourself. One of the things that really stands out in this opening issue is this new character who we're wondering who he is, and on the alternate cover, Tinkerbell, this new character has a partner named Tinkerbell, and so I'm pretty sure this new character is Peter Pan. All right, and Peter Pan approaches the adversary, because the adversary was defeated, and it's revealed here, and this is a very big revelation, that the adversary there was always somebody more powerful than the adversary, and that was this character, Peter Pan. And Peter Pan gave the adversary certain rules, and one of the rules was you basically leave this realm alone, the Monday realm alone, because Peter Pan considers this realm poisonous and everything else, and it's a problem world, etc., etc. Meanwhile, uh, Cinderella comes back to life. And how does Cinderella come back to life? Because that was the question I had. Apparently, Cinderella made a deal with God or another sorcerer. And what I love about it is William Willingham has fun with the idea that there's so much resurrection in comic books. Well, it ends up that Cinderella made a deal with a goddess or a sorcerer to have a certain implant in her leg that it's good for one resurrection. It's good for one resurrection. So when she was killed by Tottenkinder at the end in issue 150 of Fables, she's got one, thanks to sorcery, she's got one resurrection back. So she's resurrected, and this device is removed from her. And meanwhile, we've got this this other character who this old Jack Jack in the Green character is taking over control of the Black Forest, and that's where she's ultimately going to come into conflict, likely with Big Wolf, the big bad wolf, and Snow White and their children, who are sort of living in the Black Forest now. Meanwhile, the adversary is captured in this Soulstone. Peter Pan cages the adversary in this stone at the end of this issue. But adversary talked about how he's been trying to get back into power again, and he's learned some new magics, and he hints at it plants in the eyes of the reader the possibility that the adversary is going to come back, that even though Peter Pan seemingly has caged the adversary in this stone, in this magic stone, that possibly Tinkerbell is wrong when Tinkerbell says that he can't escape for 10,000 lifetimes times 10,000 lifetimes. Well, the adversary isn't down and out yet, I suspect. So I think the adversary is going to return to wreak havoc and maybe get his revenge on Peter Pan here. I love how Peter Pan looks. He wears a suit, and he's got a little kind of a fancy cane with Tinkerbell flying around him. Very, very interesting. Mark Buckingham on the art does a really good job with the character. And I'm really intrigued. He's planting the seeds here. I don't know where this is going. What's Cinderella going to do now that she's back? If she's returned, will Tottenkinder, the Wicked Witch, will she return? What the hell are the Big Bad Wolf and Snow White up to? What are their kids going to be doing now that they're budding children and they're coming into their own powers? This is this is like Sandman. If you're a Sandman reader, you can catch on to Sandman right away. If you're a Fables reader, you'll catch on to this. This is a lot of fun if you're a longtime Fables reader. I wish Willingham would have taken a little bit more care, maybe setting up some of these things for newer readers, because this is good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I know Fables has a very loyal following. I'm glad it's back for longtime readers. I mean, I tried to read the last issue, and I was, when it came back, I was so lost. The other thing I love about it, and again, I'm sure this is 100% Willingham, I give him a lot of credit. It comes back as issue 151, right? Yeah. Like there was no, hey, let's start over with the new number one, blah, blah, blah. No, I love that they just picked up where they left off. So.
And literally, it's picking up right where you could literally read 150 to 151, and it would be like there was no break, and yet there's been like what was it, a 7-year break? I mean, it was just incredible. It's been a long break, but you'd never know it by looking at the ending of the 2 issues of 150.
Yeah. I thought it was even longer than that. I thought it was. Yeah, wasn't it like 2012? I think it was 10 years, maybe.
Yeah, so. No, fair enough. Yeah, I think you're right.
I'm not sure. You could be right, but anyway, let's move on. Next up, we have Dark Crisis: Young Justice #1. This is one of many Dark Crisis adjacent series. This one's written by Megan Fitzmartin, who we know is going to be doing the new Tim Drake series that's coming up. Laura Braga is the artist, and I got to say, the art. This is maybe the best Laura Braga work I've ever seen. Her line work in this is exquisite. She really helps capture the youthful feel that a Young Justice book should have. Luis Guerrero on colors, very primary, which again helps to capture. Kind of interesting that a book that's subtitled Dark Crisis being such bright colors, but again, it's young, it's vibrant, it's very traditionally superheroic, so it should have bright colors. Pat Brosso does the letters. Again, this is a mini series, and it does tie into Dark Crisis. We're going to get 6 issues, and it does have a variant cover by Todd Knock, who, that's perfect. He, along with Peter David, are the ones that did Young Justice in comics, first. So I was very pleasantly surprised to see him with a variant cover. The main cover by Max Dunbar and Luis Guerrero is also very, very well done. So you can't go wrong with either cover. Now, all that being said, I never have read Young Justice, even though I'm a big fan of Peter David, a big fan of Todd Knock. Todd's actually a friend. I've never read it. So I can't really speak to how well this captures the feel of Young Justice, but I think it does it quite well. I think it does a very good job of balancing sort of the dark, dare I say, depressing, or at least sort of, more of a less hopeful story that Dark Crisis is, with the Justice League, having been killed. That's more of a downer of a story. Young Justice, a very upbeat story, traditionally super heroic, maybe aimed at younger readers, trying to get younger readers interested in comics. And, you've got Bart Allen Impulse as sort of the, the comedic portion of the story. You've got Tim Drake as, sort of the straight man. You've got Connell as sort of the cool kid that everybody wants to emulate. And those are the 3 that get sort of pulled back in time, back to a more innocent time, one might say, and are trying to figure things out. Meanwhile, Arrowette has left a superhero life behind, and even though these 3 disappear, nobody wants to help Cassie Sandsmark, Wonder Girl, find them, and everybody just thinks, oh, they're probably just, off dealing with their grief in private, as far as the Justice League and their mentors having been seemingly killed. And nobody wants to help Cassie. She seems to be the only one that's really worried about them. Arrowette's like, nah, I've moved on. I'm sure they're fine. So it's an interesting hook, right from the start. And in the end, there's the younger version of Cassie Sandsmark that shows up and sort of saves the boys when they're in the middle of this fight against this well-endowed super villainess. I can't even remember what her name is.
The Mighty Endowed.
That's right. The Mighty Endowed. Yeah. But again, I mean, they say Mighty Endowed, but in just about every panel she's in, she's got like all this smoke, like right in front of her chest in a lot of them.
Incidentally, Jace, that's a callback to one of the most classic issues of Young Justice where they fight her. And it's so funny. It's one of the funniest issues written by Mark Waid, where she ends up being topless. And it's so funny because they're fighting. They're as Young Justice, when they were the younger iteration of these characters, were fighting this very big-breasted woman, and the entire joke throughout the entire comic was they were distracted by her big breasts. And so to open up this issue with the Mighty Endowed, I think it's awesome. It's awesome because I got most. I'm pretty sure I own, if not every issue, 90% of the issues of Young Justice. I love this, and kudos to Fitz Martin for incorporating her. I'm actually kind of surprised that she did, because it's kind of refreshing, because it's kind of a little bit politically incorrect. It's not. It's maybe a little bit in your face, but I kind of like it. The Purian fanboy. It's fun, and they're awkward, and they even, you can tell that they kind of remember her, and it's like, do you remember her being this angry though? It's like, I mean, I just love the dialogue here. So I get the impression that the Fitzmartin had a lot of fun with the dialogue and writing this, and I had a lot of fun reading it. It brought back a nice memory, and sorry to interrupt, but it's such a great. That was my favorite part of the issue. I'm instantly in love with this issue, and I'm really curious to see where it ends up going after this.
Yeah, I mean, the other part of it is you have a female artist, and so, maybe if she's nude, it kind of sells that idea of her being well endowed, but it doesn't really come across. I mean, she doesn't look even as well endowed as like Power Girl, for example. Yeah. So, but whatever. I mean, it definitely works, and I enjoyed this issue, even though, like I said, I've never read any Young Justice. It's Cassie Sandsmark sort of trying to solve the mystery of these guys disappearing, And so I couldn't help but think of Trial of the Amazons. Is this a thing DC editorial's trying to turn Cassie Sandsmark into somewhat of a detective? Maybe it'll work better here than it does in Trial of the Amazons, but I thought this was a fun story. I really appreciated Cassie's words as well, in terms of the word balloons. She's the one that narrates the issue, and I
Yeah.
love the fact that it's red dialogue boxes with yellow letters from Pat Broso, very Wonder Girl esque. So it worked for me on that level as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, what else do you have to add? Anything?
Yeah, well, there was one line in this issue that sums it up for me. And at one point, when Connor and Impulse and Tim Drake are they're sort of trapped. They've discovered they're in this past and their idealistic past. They are, for us readers, for the majority of readers, they're actually in a certain part of the Young Justice's past that represented, frankly, the high watermark of the popularity of Young Justice. And I don't think there are many people that would disagree with me on that in terms of sales, in terms of popularity. And Connor actually says, as he looks around, he says, maybe we are back to how things should be. And I can't help as a reader to wonder that as well, because I have to tell you, I can't remember all the continuity glitches. I can't remember every aspect of the Young Justice history and continuity. I can't. And I probably read 90% of the issues. So maybe there is something off with the continuity in this issue. I couldn't really get, they talked about, I mean, the thing is, all these characters have died before. Impulse, a future version of him, has already died. Tim Drake has died before. Connor Kent has died before. These characters are characters that have died. In fact, Cassie Sandsmark even jokes in this issue about how she gets frustrated with them and says an offhand comment. She's like, I wish some of them stayed dead. She was joking, but it sort of underscores the frustration that even perhaps some of us readers have, that this is all of these characters. If you talk almost universally, you talk to any DC Comics fan, and even the ones, even like yourself, I suspect, who maybe you haven't read a lot of Young Justice, but it's kind of hard. It's hard not to like the concept, because when the characters are young, and there's something about it that these were fun characters and it was a fun concept. And the reason why nobody was a big fan of Bendis's Young Justice run was because it wasn't really those same characters. It just wasn't the same. Completely different feel. And so to get this back, and I got to tell you, I can't overemphasize the importance of having the Mighty Endowed in this issue, because this immediately set the tone for me. This tells me that this is the classic Young Justice, and I hope it isn't just a giant tease and they go they don't that they deviate too much. I personally would love for them to stay in whatever world they're in and have some fun here. This is 6 issues long. I hope Fitzmartin has a lot of fun with it. And give us a really good story here, because I think that Fitzmartin, I wasn't too impressed with her Tim Drake story that she did for Pride there. Let her show off her storytelling skills, where she can focus on story as opposed to exploring the identity of one of the characters. So and I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean I think I want her to show off her storytelling abilities, because she clearly has an understanding of humor. There was humor here. This was a fun issue. She did a really good job here, and I much prefer this to anything she's done previous.
Yeah, I thought. I'm glad you commented on how they sort of very meta. Well, we've died before. It's why nobody knows. And Joshua Williamson's done it a lot in the lead up to Dark Crisis. Why nobody's that worried about these characters being dead? Because they've all been dead before. Everybody's died and come back. It's so tropey at this point. So I'm glad that they kind of addressed that. All right, up next we have Duo number 2 from writer Greg Pak. Pencils are by Koi Pham. Inks by Scott Hanna. Colors by Chris Sotomayor. Letters by Janice Shang. This is in the Milestone universe. First issue, we saw these two scientists merge along with nanites, and that's where this issue picks up. Thus, the title Duo. What'd you think?
The Milestone universe taking place on Earth M. I enjoy this. I'm enjoying this. This is an interesting. I know nothing about. Again, I'm Milestone. I consider myself very new to the Milestone universe, and I love the alternate. I love cover A and cover B here. It was gorgeous. I mean, these lead characters, David and Kelly, they're basically merged, and the when their husband and wife, when Kelly was killed, she was killed while she had already had nanites injected in her body. So when she was killed, her nanites merged with her husband David. And meanwhile, there are these group of immortals called the Immutables, led by this character named Morian, and this led by this character named led by this character named Marius. And Marius believes that David and Kim are a great threat to the Immutables. And so now the impression I got is that the Immutables are sort of, they're like these immortal group of superpowered beings in the Milestone universe. And I'm not sure why they consider potentially Duo to be a threat. But what's the bulk of this second issue is that, and similar to what I think Willingham is doing for Fables, I think writer Greg Pak here is still sort of setting the chess pieces on the board. That we're still getting to know these characters. The bulk of this issue is, and this is where I really got to give the artist Koi Pham a lot of credit, because the way that he visually conveys the merging of the minds between David and Kelly is very interesting. I thought it visually it works, and because you can almost tell it's almost like the characters, like David is almost on. It's almost like he's walking on a brain, and there's darkness on the brain, and it's Kelly's face is sort of imbued in various crevices of the brain tissue, and conveying the idea that their minds are merged. It's his body, but their minds are merged, and she can kind of control his body at some point and sometimes control what he says. And this issue sort of gives the readers, we get some idea as to how their powers work. And what I like what Greg Pak has done is that we, the readers, are learning about Duo's powers just as Duo is. So we're learning in real time just as they are. It's done to great effect, and it's done really well. Meanwhile, they don't really know what's going on. And they end up, as they're trying to figure out what's going on and learn their powers, they end up going, literally, David, technically, Kelly is the one who died because David's body was still intact. So David, to the outside world, Kelly was killed, but David wasn't. They end up going to their own, David ends up going to Kelly's funeral. And, and that's where we meet this detective Maya, who's investigating Kelly's murder. And of course, she's, and ironically enough, a person of interest in who murdered Kelly is, of course, David himself. Of course, David can't say, "Don't worry, guys. Don't worry, detective. My wife is merged with me." Well, that's not going to fly. So it's very interesting, very well done. Meanwhile, Greg Pak infuses a lot of humor here. I like that. Clearly, David and Kelly love each other. Kelly teases David. She's a little bit jealous of the way how she perceives Detective Maya checking out her husband, and she can actually have the same sort of physical feelings, that she knows what her husband is feeling, and he can tell what she's feeling. And if David pinches himself, Kelly will feel it. So it's very interesting. I think very well done. You got into I feel like I got to know these characters, David and Kelly, and I'm interested, and I have a vested interest in wanting what's. I care about what's happens to them, and this is just in the second issue, and I don't. I think last issue I maybe Googled what these characters actually were originally called, but I don't know. All I know is that I'm really interested in this. I don't know. I don't know where it's going. I don't I don't know where this is going. I want to know who these immutables are. Why are these group of seemingly immortal beings calling themselves the Immutables? What do they have to do with anything? What do they have to do with the plot? Why do they want them dead? How could Duo possibly be a danger to these immortal beings led by this person named Morian? There's still so many questions I have. I don't have the answers to it, but I'm really curious to know what the future holds for these characters. Shout out to colors by Chris Sotomayor. The coloring very well done. I thought is, again, I was impressed. I really liked the cover too. The cover with the image of Kelly's face, multiple images of Kelly's face surrounding her husband David. I thought was just a gorgeous cover, and a cover B is really great as well, with purple and the offset with her sort of like melting or sort of like fading and misting away, sort of as a good symbolism of nanites, or just the psychological element of the story. I think this was actually one of the better representations on a cover as to what is actually psychologically going on in the content of the story. So overall, I got to say this was again, Milestone. This is one of the more impressive individual issues.
Yeah, to be clear, this is a new concept. There was no duo. They're not based on
Oh,
anybody from Milestone back in the day. So
okay.
if if you're if you're a reader and you've been wondering, hey, can I pick up this Milestone stuff and hit the ground running without having read the old stuff? I think all the Milestone titles do a really good job um, of making them new reader friendly, but this one especially. And DC has come out and said that they have no plans to have any of the new concepts that they're introducing in the Milestone line interact with any of the older stuff, as opposed to, we'll talk about it when we do the Milestones in history, how there's a tease for an icon and a hardware crossover. For now, there's no plans on Duo interacting with any of the other concepts that are out there. So, yeah, what stands out for me in this story, and Rocky kind of touched on it in terms of being interested in the characters. Greg Pak in a very short period of time, only 2 issues. What he does is he presents an intimate look at who these characters are, and anybody who's in a relationship will immediately do what I did. I think you're gonna read this and you're like, oh, my wife kind of knows my thoughts, or if I'm looking at another woman, or I mean, we're all human, right? You have physiological reactions when you see a woman that has some of those traits that you find physically attractive, and man, the last thing I would want is my wife in my head going, oh, she's got nice legs, or I like her hair, or whatever, because you feel bad. Obviously, you commit to one person to spend the rest of your life with them, and you don't want to make them feel bad. David doesn't have that luxury anymore. His wife, lives in his body, and vice versa. Like, if he sees a guy that has the traits that his wife finds attractive, or the traits that she might wish that David exhibited, she's got no place to hide. She's got no place to hide those things because they're merged. And I just, God, it's almost like, what's your worst nightmare? What's your worst nightmare? Having your thoughts there for your other significant other to read and understand and hear. You don't want to make them feel bad. You care about them or what have you. So you can't help, at least I couldn't when I read it, put myself in David's shoes and just think, man, what a tremendous challenge. And they're not always getting along in this issue, but for the most part they are. But you can see the seeds planted for later on. What if they're not? What if something horrible happens, or David decides, I'm going to do this thing that Kelly 100% is against. We've seen her be able to control his body at some point. Are they going to fight over the body? Like, there's seeds planted um, for some animosity, or some real sort of tug of war over the physical body. And you feel bad for Kelly that she doesn't have that physical body anymore. So yeah, there's a lot of seeds here for really great storytelling. I think Greg Pak is a very underrated writer. He hasn't been doing a whole lot of big two work in the last few years, so I'm glad to see him back. I'm glad to see him doing this because this is working on a lot of levels for me. The Koi Fam art, I didn't enjoy it in the second issue as much as I did in the first issue. I didn't think the art was as clean, but it still works really, really well. I especially enjoyed the scenes where Kelly and David are talking I guess, in what David pictures his own mind as, in a lot of ways. It's definitely some sort of mindscape. So I think that works as well. Probably where it works, the art works the best. So yeah, I think this is, if you're curious about the Milestone universe and you want to jump on, but you're like, I just don't feel comfortable reading hardware, icon, or static because I never read the other stuff. Pick this up because there's no other stuff. There's no previous Milestone analog or a series for Duo. So you can pick this up and feel like you're not missing out on anything from back in the day. Okay, up next we have The Flash number 783. This is from writer Jeremy Adams. Ammon K. Nawalpen is the artist. Jeremy Cox on colors. Rob Lee on letters. Oh my God, this was such a fantastic issue. I mean, we've had Jeremy Adams on the show. He's specifically talked about wanting to make his Flash run very all ages friendly. He talks about how a lot of the DC titles are sort of tough to to get into. If you're a younger reader or you're not, reading everything, and how he always wants to make his title very accessible. Now, this is a Dark Crisis tie-in, and my argument would be that even though it's a Dark Crisis tie-in, this is still really new reader friendly. You get all the information you need with gorgeous art by Noel Pan, and like not only does Noel Pan do really great art, he covers all these different eras, right? We've got some of the art which looks like old school comic where you could see the color dots, because it's Barry Allen and Iris West when they were married, and it harkens back to the 60s and what have you. Because what's happening here, we know Barry Allen is sort of lost in the DC multiverse, and Wally gets together a bunch of the Flash family, and they're going to go out into the Speed Force / multiverse and look for Barry. And so, as different members of the Flash family go to different parts of the multiverse, Noel Pan sort of changes his art style to suit wherever they are, including this Silver Age idealized version of the DC universe with Barry and Wally as Kid Flash back in the day, and Iris West there married to Barry. So it's just fantastic. This is one of those books where it reminds you of what DC Comics, where they came from and what they could be. It's not super convoluted. Again, even though it's tied into Dark Crisis, the fact that Barry's missing and that aspect of the story ties into Dark Crisis, it sort of doesn't matter to the story that Adam seems to be telling here, at least not right now. It may tie in very much more as the story goes on to Dark Crisis, but Barry could be missing for any number of reasons. All what matters is the characterization that Jeremy Adams gives Wally, which is very traditional and in the same vein that Mark Waid did and Jeff Johns did, and the other characters, Mr. Terrific, Linda Park's characterization, all that again feels very authentic and very real, and you just end up with this really, really fun comic. And honestly, Jeremy was on the show and talked about how he has all these ideas for other books, and I'm like, DC, please give this guy at least one more book a month to read, or to write, because he gets it. Jeremy Adams gets what the DC universe is supposed to feel like. Like his book feels more like a Jeff Johns aesthetic than any other writer that I can remember in recent time. Jeff Johns is a hugely popular writer when it comes to DC books because, and I know it's sort of a 4-letter word sometimes for, DC fans, you guys get tired of hearing us say it, but DC should be a universe that's filled with hope. Yes, bad things happen, but at the end of the day, there's this aspirational and inspirational feel to the universe. It's why I always say when the Superman books are going really well, that I know the DC universe is going really well, because Superman should be an inspirational and aspirational character. So when his books are going that way, that sort of infuses the whole line. So I just, that's what Jeremy Adams does. And I know it's high praise to compare him to Jeff Johns, and I'm not saying he's Jeff Johns. What I'm saying is he gets that closer to that Jeff Johns aesthetic than any other writer that I've read in a long time. And I really wish DC would let him write more than one book. Like, I'd love him on a Green Lantern book. I'd love him on Superman. I think he'd do fantastic on Justice League. And DC, you want new readers? He keeps it new reader friendly. He manages to do all this and much like Jeff Johns, really mine the past history and past stories of the DC universe really, really well, but yet he keeps it new reader friendly. I just think he's a fantastic writer, so underrated in my mind. Doesn't get near enough credit for how fantastic this Flash run is. This is the best Flash run in decades, and I wasn't one of those people that didn't like what what Joshua Williams did. I liked a lot of what Joshua Williams did, but to me, this surpasses it. It really does. And I mean, I haven't been this excited about the Flash book since Robert Venditti was on the title. But I think Adams does even a better job than Venditti. Sorry, Rob. But I mean, this is the best Flash run to me since Jeff Johns was on the book. It really is. And even the Jeff Johns run itself, toward the end, got a little, especially with the Flashpoint. Obviously, there was a reason for that. They wanted to reset the DC universe, but even the Jeff Johns run got, less positive as it went on. There was a lot of negativity toward the end, and again, reasons for that. But man, this really, truly, for me, is the best Flash run in decades. So I know you've been enjoying it too, Rocky. I wasn't as excited about it as you were at first, but as it's gone on, Adams has completely won me over because it's consistent month in, month out. It never wavers. It's fantastic. It's fun. Like, I'm thinking back to the issue that Jeremy Adams wrote with his daughter, I think it was.
Yeah.
The Irie, and I mean, the issue where you had to turn it, you had to blow. I mean, just it's
Dr.
fun.
Fate. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just month in and month out, this title is just so good. So good.
Yeah, he's not afraid to do something different. He's not afraid to have fun with it. And Jeremy Adams, you mentioned Jeff Johns quite a bit there, and even before Jeremy Adams collaborated with Jeff Johns, and he's collaborating with Jeff Johns along with Tim Sheridan for Flashpoint Beyond, and that's a very good title as well. But Jeremy Adams was showing signs of capturing some small amounts of Jeff Johns' sensibilities, and he keeps getting better here. And I'm not going to. I think the jury is still out in terms of me ranking Jeremy Adams, because I still love Mark Waid and Grant Morrison's Flash runs. I love those runs. Jeff Johns is actually, I'm not a huge fan of Jeff Johns' Flash run, and that's the irony here. I actually do prefer Jeremy Adams so far. He's outclassing Jeff Johns on the Flash. I suspect you and I are both probably in the minority on that. But in any event, it doesn't really matter. I mean, they're all damn good. They're all good, whether it's Mark Waid, Grant Morrison, Jeff Johns, Jeremy Adams. Wow, I mean, that's like loving fruit and having to choose between an apple and an orange and a banana and whatever, a mango. I mean, good luck. They're all good. But this is a lot of fun. And Jeremy Adams is, he's linking everything. Everything's coming full circle. When Jeremy Adams first came on the scene, his first series set of Flash issues had to do with Flash, with Wally West being sort of lost in different parts of the time, and he was in World War II, and he was in the future, and he was all over the place. And during that period of time, Mr. Terrific developed a way to sort of like track the Flashes and to sort of like figure out a Speed Force fingerprint of each individual Flash. And I'm oversimplifying it because I don't want to try to pretend to talk like Mr. Terrific, but suffice to say that Mr. Terrific is essentially, he tells the Flash family here, he tells Wally West, Max Mercury, Jesse Quick, Wallace West, calls him Ace, and Jay Garrick. He tells him, look, there's a way that we could track Barry Allen, because I think we can track him because of his unique Speed Force fingerprint. But it's sort of like having an identical phone number, but with different area codes. He's tracked down 3 different Barry Allens in the multiverse, and so Mr. Terrific creates tracking devices in the form of watches that he says, throw on these watches, go, and one of these Barry Allens is going to be the right Barry Allen that we're looking for, and then bring him home. So in typical comic book fashion, which is awesome in all the right ways, it sounds so simple. Not a problem. Throw on the Speed Force watches, go find the right Barry Allen and bring him home. Of course, this being a Flash story, you got to have some drama. And, Linda, of course, is still struggling to try to tell Wally, by the way, I have super speed powers as well. But she never has a chance to tell him that, because lo and behold, the kids, Jay and Irie, show up at the lab. They grab the watches and they take off into the Speed Force because they want it. They want to be heroes too, just like their dad. And Mr. Terrific says, look, well, we can track them, but they're going to have to, if they were listening, they got to activate the watch themselves in order to come back, so I can pull them back into our realm. But in any event, they're sort of like, they end up in one of the realms where one of the Barry Allens is, and they end up in a place where there is Allen Tower. And so it appears to be a world where this Barry Allen is sort of like an Elon Musk or a Bill Gates. He's got his own tech company, and this Barry Allen is he's got Allen Tech. And
it reminded me of Back to the Future too, right? With
Biff's
got his giant casino.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, it's very well done. That's what's it's that got that cool factor. And then the other realm, it looks like a Mad Max where Barry Allen is a Mad Max character driving a vehicle. Doesn't seem to have speed powers, but he loves driving fast, but in a car like Fast and Furious Mad Max. It's pretty cool. And and then of course the other iteration of Barry was with Barry Allen with Iris Allen, the same on the same world where that we saw in Justice League Incarnate, where I believe it's Pariah's world, where or some iteration of it where Barry Allen is close to Iris, because I'm pretty sure that's the same Barry Allen that Justice League Incarnate encountered in the final issue or one of the final issues of Justice League Incarnate, leading into Justice League 75 and ultimately Dark Crisis #1. So, uh, Wally and Ace, Wally and Wallace West, they're in the world where one of the Barry Allen with Iris is there, and meanwhile Jay and Irie are in Alan Tech world, and Mad Max and pardon me, the I believe Jay Garrick and Max Mercury are in the Mad Max uh, world of what I'm calling the Mad Max version of Barry Allen. So yeah, this is a lot of fun. This is a lot of fun. And my favorite scene is I love the fact that Linda's struggling to tell Wally about the fact that she has powers. There's a fantastic scene where Wally pulls on his mask and says, "I'll be back with the kids, Linda. The kids, Barry, all of them. That's a Flash fact." And it just looks so cool. Them pulling the mask on, determined as hell, and you know he's going to do it. This is just a lot of fun. I love the cover. The cover here is fantastic. Cover A. I love, to me, cover A's should be the best of all the covers. I don't care how many variants they have, how many ratio variants they have, whatever. To me, cover A, the fans that buy the regular price comic deserve the best cover. That's the way it should be. That's my bias. And that's exactly what we get here for $3.99. Keep it at $3.99 DC. This is great. Like I said, I'm enjoying this. Uh, there's an opening image here with Barry Allen seemingly killing Reverse Flash or fighting him. That looks just amazing, and it's very well done. And it's if you've been following Jeremy Adams the Flash up to this point, this is an easy jumping on point. It's because it's action packed, it's fun, riddled with what the stakes are. They're looking for Barry Allen. Everybody knows that Barry Allen's been missing anyway, even if you're not that familiar with the DC universe. Surprise, surprise, Barry Allen's lost in the Speed Force again. So it's easy to, that's all you need to know, really. And it's a lot of fun. So yeah, this is another great issue this week, another great comic.
yeah. I mean, Jeremy Adams he's just killing it. It's so good, and the art by Noel Penn again. I mean, the fact that he's given us fantastic art and he's having to change his style. I mean, just fantastic work. So, okay, up next we have the first issue of a new mini, Aquaman and the Flash Void Song, book 1, Overture for Silent Armageddon. This is written by Colin Kelly and Jackson Lansing. Art is by Vasco Gregov, and the art I was really blown away. I haven't heard of Vasco before, but I thought the art was fantastic. Colors are by Rain Barreto. Letters by Troy Petrie. It doesn't say it's Black Label, so I'm assuming it's in continuity, fits in somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, it doesn't look
era.
like the shape. The covers, the shape of the cover looks like a standard comic book. It doesn't look like Black Label, and it doesn't have the label. So
Yeah, but not all the Black Labels are the oversized, because when they did
that's true.
Last Night on Earth, the Batman, Greg Capullo, when they specifically wanted it to be regular size because all their other Batman work had been regular size. But regardless, this appears to be in continuity, but apparently it happened during the satellite era of the Justice League. But Flash has his new 52 version of his costume. So I don't think about it too much. Just read the story because it's pretty solid. What'd you think?
Yeah, you know what? I full confession. I went in inclined not to like this because I went in assuming this was going to be like another Deep Target experience, and because I was really disappointed with the Green Arrow Aquaman crossover Deep Target. Despite the best efforts of writer Brandon Thomas on that, I thought it was disappointing, very disjointed. It didn't really feel connected to the mainstream DC universe in any way. It just seemed really, really odd. The story itself, the characters, everything was just really, really off. And so I went in predisposed to thinking this was just going to be another throwaway story that was kind of boring. And honestly, Kelly and Lansing on the writing, I've always found them to be good soldiers. So Kelly and Lansing are writers where if a series is about to be ended or canceled, they'll put Kelly and Lansing on it to write the last few issues. That's always been my experience with them. Now, and they're good soldiers. Like they can write good stories, just not memorable ones. So that's just my opinion. And but again, they're good soldiers when it comes to writing. And much to my surprise, I actually thought this was a great premise, a heck of a lot better than Deep Target was, because what I like about this is because the central conceit is, well, how do you take all the Justice League members off the playing field, and you only have a situation where you're relying on the Flash and Aquaman, and goddamn, Kelly and Lansing do a good job of making me believe that this is believable, and basically what it is that starts off. It starts off showing the planet. It looks like the planet Saturn, and it's 5 hours, and it's 4 hours, and 3 hours, and ultimately, as this alien force gets bigger and bigger and closer to Earth, 4 hours, 3 hours, 2 hours, and 1 hour, and eventually it's going to be, and then it's got impact. It impacts the Earth, and just as it impacts the Earth, this alien invasion, it's at the precise moment where the Flash is within the Speed Force, and Aquaman has just recently been attacked and seemingly defeated by Black Manta, and he's in the deep, deep ocean. And so this sonic blast that initiated this alien invasion, ultimately, the only reason why, and this is an invasion where it sort of it mind controls every life form on Earth, including the Justice League, but it doesn't impact Flash because he's protected, because he's within the Speed Force. And Aquaman is so deep in the ocean, they theorize that this attack has a depth, is limited as to the depth of inside the Earth that it can go. So Aquaman was protected by the depths of the ocean. And so when Aquaman resurfaces and Flash comes out of the Speed Force, they discover an Earth where it's almost like Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Everyone's been taken over, and they're not really sure what to do. And but the visuals here are really good. And I want to give my apologies. I should give a shout out to the Georgie V.
I think it's Vasco Gregov, I think is how you pronounce it.
Vasco.
Right. Yeah, Vasco's his first name, and I think it's Gregov.
Well,
It's Russian, obviously.
Okay, well, it's Geor. It looks like Georgiev. Or maybe it's Georgiev or something. But was it spelled different? I don't know. Vasco. Looks like Vasco Georgiev. But in any event, the art here I thought really worked. It worked. I'm not familiar with his art, but the way he draws Flash and Iris West, I quite liked it. I thought it was kudos to Kelly and Lansing. They nailed the relationship between Barry Allen and Iris Allen quite well. The art was really good. The antagonism and the rapport between Mira and Aquaman is quite good. I never got any visions of Amber Heard as I read this, so that's probably a good thing. And it was well done. I thought well established, good characterization, good setup for the issue, and it's a good setup. It's just a good setup, and it's believable, because the most important thing here is, how are you going to make me believe that the Justice League is taken off the table? And good Lord, you got to rely on Aquaman and Flash to save the Earth? This actually works, and I'm actually intrigued by it. And there's no time travel shenanigans. This is just a good old-fashioned alien invasion with really good art, great action sequences, and like the coloring is really great as well. And the Aquaman and Flash, I've never thought of these two as being in a team up before. So this right away, that just sort of threw me off. Flash and Aquaman, I just don't think of these two as getting along very well. And actually, I don't think they're naturally a good fit for each other. And that is even played a little bit in their characters. I think Kelly and Lansing nailed these characters quite well. And I thought it was fun. And I'm looking forward to see where this goes. And I don't know. This is book one. Do you know, did you say before, is this 2 or 3 issues or 6 or what is it?
I don't know how many issues. It doesn't say.
Because this
And I
is
don't know.
51 issues. This is 50 pages. Sorry, this is 50 pages, this opening issue.
Yeah, I thought
That's
it worked
huge.
really well. I mean, my favorite thing about it might be the art. I mean, again, not familiar with Gregov or Georgiev or however you pronounce his name. Apologies, not familiar with him. Like I said, but I thought the art was fantastic. I love the like you said, the way he draws. I think you said Flash and Iris. I like the way he drew Mira and Aquaman, especially their costumes. So um, yeah, it's fantastic. It's interesting that the Void song refers to the fact that when Aquaman and Flash kind of come back from their various remote locations and find everybody taken over, everybody's standing around, kind of frozen with their mouths open, their eyes blacked out, and they're singing a song. So that's apparently it's aliens from the Void, and they've taken over these people, and they're all singing a song. So uh, you know a little bit tropey when it comes to the sort of the central idea of the story. Um, I agree with Rocky that Lansing and Kelly they have been asked many times to kind of fill in at the last moment on this thing or that thing. Oftentimes, as he mentioned, when something's coming to an end, they've come up with plenty of great things on their own. And so, I'm glad they're getting a chance to do this, um,
Yeah.
where it's they're getting to tell their story from start to finish. They're not having to pick up the threads of somebody else's story. So yeah, between the fantastic art and the interesting story, I'm all in on this. I was very, very impressed. Didn't know what to think. It's like I kind of had not necessarily a bad taste in my mouth, but I wasn't. Again, much like Rocky, some of the other crossover stuff that we've had recently, especially the Aquaman Green Arrow, as you mentioned, it was just okay. It was just average. It wasn't it wasn't bad. It wasn't great. Maybe won't be memorable in the long run. I feel like this is one that I'll remember. Like this is one I'm excited to read. Can't wait to see what happens next. So, all right, up next, you're gonna have to bear with me here because they didn't give us a consolidated credits page, but it's milestones in history. We've got a lot of pages here in this particular book, 93 pages, including the covers, and it's a lot of different stories. So the first one is a story about Lucy, who was a primate that's sort of an evolutionary ancestor of the human race. Her story is written by Alice Randall. Eric Battles, the artist. Ava De La Cruz on colors. And World Design does the letters. The next story is about the Queen of Sheba, which is almost a myth at this point. But it's written by Amy Chu. Maria Laura Sanapo does the art. Michael Atea on colors. Carlos M. Mangual does the letters. The third story is about Hannibal, the famous general who took elephants over the was it the Alps?
Yeah.
Anyway,
Yeah. The
attacked.
Appalachian Mountains.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Attacked Rome from the supposed unattackable direction. That story is written by Stephen Barnes. Ron Wilson does the pencils on that. Ron Wilson, known mostly for his Marvel work on Thing back in the day, doesn't do a lot of comics work now. When I saw these pencils, I was like, why isn't Ron Wilson still working in comic? Like, oh my God, he's so good. Especially, again, not to badmouth anybody, but we get some pretty rough art sometimes. And here's this guy who can, maybe he's not at a point where he can do a monthly book anymore, but man, put him on a mini or something. His pencils really blew me away. Mike
Amazing.
Gustovich did the inks, Michael Atea on colors, and World Design on letters. So that was a really great story. The next one talks about Alexander Pushkin, who actually is a descendant of Hannibal. Um, so, again, and I'll talk about this when I get to the book, but I really was impressed by a lot of these stories. Again, they're all about all real people, historic people, thus the title Milestones in History. Alice Randall is the writer, Don Hudson on pencils, Jose Marzan Jr. on inks, Andrew Dahlhaus on colors, and Josh Reed on letters. The next story is about Alexander Dumas, who a lot of people will know mostly as the writer of Three Musketeers. Um, this story is written by, I'm going to mispronounce this and I apologize, Tananarive, Tananarive, last name Du. Apologies for mispronouncing that first name. It's just I have no clue how to say it correctly. Jamal Eigel is the artist on it. Chris Sotomayor on colors and world design on letters. Again, Count of Monte Cristo, Three Musketeers, and story about the author behind those stories, who many people may not realize was a person of color. The next story is called Ace. It's the story of this man named Eugene Ballard, who was born to slaves, basically, or born as a slave, or to people who were slaves, and again, back in the South in that time, very oppressed, and managed to make his way to France and make a really good life for himself. Then got drawn into World War I, eventually became a pilot, fought against the Red Baron. So just a really good story, again, of somebody who I think most people don't know his story. So it's great to see it shared here. Next up, we have Spirit Step from Karen Parsons. She's the artist on it. If that name sounds familiar, she played the sister in the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So not really a fan of that show, but apparently that's who she is. Francesco Francavilla does the art and world design on letters. That story of this woman who was interested in voodoo and Haitian rituals and whatnot. Controversy is the next story, and it's about Prince, the musical legend. Touré is the writer. Ray Anthony Height does the art. Dan Brown on colors. Carlos M. Mangual on letters. Next story is sort of the story of two pioneering women in aviation. It's written by Melody Cooper. Domo Stanton does the art. Emilio Lopez on colors. Steve Wands on letters. And again, the story of two different women. Bessie Coleman, who was born in 1892. She was really the first woman aviator, and inspired a lot of people, including the woman that the rest of the story is about, Mae Jemison, who was born in 1956 in Alabama during civil rights movement, and remembers as a young child Martin Luther King riots and that sort of thing, and her being inspired by the aforementioned Bessie Coleman to become a pilot and eventually an astronaut. And she was even on an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, which I thought was really awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to honor her. And then at the end, we've got a story that leads actually into comics. That's written by Reginald Hudlin, and Leon Chills, pencils by Dennis Cowan, inks by John Stanisi, and letters by Justin Birch, with colors by Chris Sotomayor. And it's a hardware breaking into a secret government installation, because apparently he wants some information about Icon and thinks he's stealing Icon's spaceship. It turns out to be something far, far different than that. And we're told that story is going to continue in Icon versus Hardware. So again, tons of creators on this, almost 100 pages. For the vast majority of the issue, it's telling these stories and history of these real life people, persons of color. And, I consider myself pretty well educated, like I did really well in school all the way up through high school, went to college. And I didn't realize, and I guess I just never stopped to think about it, how many of these historical figures were persons of color, right? Like, you think about where supposedly human, or I shouldn't say supposedly, but where humans as a species started, right? Like in Ethiopia, they call it, the cradle of man or what have you, where we, eventually evolved from apes, and everybody was a person of color back then, and it was only through years of evolution and people living in places where there wasn't as much sun that some people became more light skinned, and we certainly have, much more in common with people of different skin tones than, some particular people would want to admit, but we're all more alike, much more alike than we're different, right? Like 99.9999999, out to however many decimal places, the same as the next person. The variation between one person and the next in your DNA is minuscule, and it makes the difference of, whether you're bald or you have brown hair or blue eyes or what have you. So it's really interesting to think about, hey, a lot of these people were persons of color. Like, I had no idea that the guy that wrote Three Musketeers, and maybe it's on me, maybe I'm the ignorant one, right? That I didn't know that was a person of color. So I enjoyed this, and I mean, I enjoy history, so maybe I'm, not the right person to judge this book, because I do feel like, is a comic, I've thought about this a lot since I've read this last week. Is a comic the best place to tell these stories? Well, probably not if you want the complete story. It can probably be told better through prose, or at least if it's going to be in comic book form, in a longer form, because really limited. But what this can do is introduce people to a lot of these historical figures, and then kind of open up that curiosity where, hey, let me go read a book about Alexander Dumas, or let me go find out more about Alexander Pushkin, or Mae Jemison, who's still with us, or the incredible life of Eugene Ballard, who came from nothing and managed to make his way to Paris and become a world champion boxer, and then eventually open a jazz club, and then give that up to be a spy for the Allies or actually become a pilot in World War I, and then later, with his jazz club, a spy against the Nazis. I mean, this guy led an incredible life, and eventually became an elevator operator. Like, the whole reason his story got out there, he was an elevator operator in the building in New York City where they filmed the Today Show, and he would wear his war medals on his uniform. And somebody asked him one day. So, I mean, just a fascinating story. So, I won't say what my least favorite was. I mean, they're not all great in terms of technical comic book, and I some of these people have probably never written a comic before, so there's a couple where the pacing felt a little off, or it felt a little choppy, but I enjoyed every one of them. Even that being said, I thought the art was fantastic. It's a very inspiring book in a lot of ways, and I hope people pick this up. I hope they give it a chance. I hope they don't pick it up and then feel sort of cheated because, hey, I thought I was going to be reading stories about superheroes. You get a little bit of that at the end, and I am curious about the Hardware and Icon story. But I just thought that this was great. Just a great way to give these very deserving historical figures a little bit of a spotlight. And again, I hope it spurs people, hope it inspires young persons of color to know that people that look like them, and when we talk about representation, how important it is, have done incredible things throughout history. I hope it inspires them to strive to be their best and to learn more about these historical figures. So yeah, I thought it was really, really well done. And I give a lot of credit to the Milestone, the people behind Milestone for doing this, and for DC for allowing them to do it. So if I have any complaint at all, I wish this had come out during Black History Month, and they could have promoted it as such even more. I think it would have maybe got more eyes on it. But I thought it was great. What'd you think?
Yeah. This was, I remember when I was younger, I still have, I mean, they're pretty much destroyed, but I got a whole pile of Classics Illustrated. I loved reading history. I loved reading about the classics from the books and in comic book form. I loved reading. I would kill for something like this when I was younger. This has got nothing to do with color as far as I'm concerned. This is history. This is awesome history. This is actual real life history. I'll be honest, the one thing that I thought was jarringly out of place was the final story with Hardware. I thought that was very jarring. Like, what does Hardware have to do with this? This is a great comic. This is Milestones in history. This is a history lesson. beautifully drawn. And it starts off with Icon and Rocket and Static just introducing themselves and basically giving you an idea what the book's about. And then you get these amazing stories. And it's visually, this is just beautiful. You got different artistic styles, different stories, but are real down to earth, like real stories from history. The best stories are the true stories. Every life is a biography. And it just like these are just fantastic, great stories. And they just happen to be black characters or black people in history. And this is just very well done. You're absolutely right that this certainly could have been part of Black History Month. Although, for what it's worth, I know Morgan Freeman always sort of, being a black, obviously he's a black person, and he sort of resents that a little bit. He says just call it History Month, and I'm inclined to agree to a certain extent because I'm a lover of history. I got one of my degrees that I did nothing with is in history. I love history, and I love this. I learned something reading this, and it was interesting. I mean, I might know more about maybe history than your average layperson, but there's still a pile I don't know. I didn't know about the Three Musketeers, about the Arthur being black. I didn't know that. I learned all kinds of things reading this, even about the first story about Lucy and and the archaeology and the evolution and all the finer details. That's what you can learn a lot from comic books. I mean, who says you can't learn something reading a comic book? And it's good and it's interesting. And again, I did find it a little odd at the end that we suddenly jumped to hardware, and I didn't know. I don't know what on earth the hardware story had anything to do, even thematically, with the rest of the comic. I didn't need it, but it doesn't hurt it. I'll check it out. I find hardware, interestingly enough. But this is one anthology that I'll absolutely pick up. I'm going to pick this up because I'm a lover of history, and I think this is so well done. And this is a genuine showcase of great history. That's some genuine. You learn something, and the characters are good. And it's and if you're so inclined, you can check out the Milestone characters. But you can definitely see where the inspiration comes from. And this is they're doing this right because there's nothing worse than when you are if you want to showcase what if you showcase something you don't have a good story showcasing it, it might come across as just sort of putting anything out there. I mean, you can't have a better tribute to history and just casting a light on just how much black culture has contributed to society than having a comic book like this. So this was really well done, and I can't say that for all anthologies that purport to be made for a cause, but this one is really good.
Yeah, again, super impressed. Really glad DC decided to do it. And yeah, it's definitely worth picking up. And uh, again, I hope it inspires people to learn more about these historical figures. So,
Mm.
all right, up next we have Nightwing. We're up to issue number 93 from writer Tom Taylor. Bruno Redondo is the artist. Wade Von Grobinger on inks for pages 14 through 20. Adriana Lucas on the colors. Wes Abbott on letters. The Battle for Bloodhaven's Heart, Part 2. What do you think?
Uh, I'm starting to sound. I think all my reviews of Nightwing are going to start to sound the same and the same and the same every time because this is. I just it's good and you know I just I find that it's good, and this is clearly building toward what will likely be. It's great for building the character and the what's building on the relationship between Nightwing and Barbara Gordon, and probably anyone who thinks that we're gonna have a wedding in the future between Nightwing and Barbara Gordon at some point around issue 100 of Nightwing. You're probably right. That's exactly what's going to happen. We have great character work. You're not going to get better character work than Tom Taylor scripting Barbara Gordon and Dick Grayson continuing to fall in love. And this is clearly headed toward a wedding. I think the writing's on the wall here. And I predict, and it's not my prediction, everybody's been predicting this since this began, or at least they've been hinting at it, that we're not going to have a repeat of Batman 50 where we're told about a wedding that doesn't take place. We're actually going to have that here. I think that's where this is headed. This is Blockbuster. Heartless confronts Blockbuster. And we get some interesting revelations here that Heartless loves taking people's hearts who if somebody's going to miss you, Heartless, this villain, he'll take your heart, because as long as you have somebody to miss you, then he's going to take your heart. Heartless's motivation is revealed here. It's been hinted at in earlier issues, but Heartless confronts Blockbuster, and because Heartless wants to tell Blockbuster, look, I want, what is it going to cost me? I want to take over Bloodhaven. I want to take all the hope from Bloodhaven. Nightwing is the heart of Bloodhaven. Dick Grayson represents the heart of Bloodhaven. So I want to take the heart of Bloodhaven, and by doing so, he wants to take out and kill Dick Grayson. That's why he wants control. Heartless wants to control Bloodhaven. And of course, Blockbuster's not going to stand for that. Heartless here underestimates, much to his chagrin, he very much underestimates Blockbuster. And while he can hold his own, we still don't know who Heartless is. But Blockbuster ends up throwing him out of the building, and he ends up at the end recovering.
Well,
and
he throws him out of the building. I mean,
yeah.
You hear that, and he's like, yeah, I was in this bar and I got thrown out because I was too drunk. I mean, he throws him, out of the penthouse of the building out through the window by smashing him with a desk. I mean, when Rocky says he throws him out of the building, I mean, he literally throws him out of the building.
And then Blockbuster calls Commissioner McLean and says, I need a cleanup crew on my top floor and on the street below. It's like, yeah, you probably do. But Heartless is fairly resilient, so he does not die. And ultimately, it's revealed that Heartless, the hearts that Heartless ends up taking, he actually ends up using to continue to preserve his life. So Heartless almost has the ability to he's got as many lives as he has hearts that he's taken from his opponents. And so that's interesting. And juxtaposed along this confrontation between Heartless and Blockbuster, we have what is becoming kind of Tom Taylor's trademark. Well, it is his trademark. Great character moments with Dick Grayson letting it slip that he loves Barbara Gordon. Great dialogue. Fantastic art by Bruno Redondo. I mean, this is just really good stuff. Again, if you've been with it so far and you've been enjoying this series, you're going to just continue to like it. The art's just really, really good. It's a little bit convenient. It's maybe a little bit too convenient how he takes up some corrupt cops here. Dick Grayson has a run-in with cops, and he's got his the cops. The Commissioner McLean wants to make an example, and he wants to sort of get even with, take some control over what Dick Grayson has done, and so he starts arresting the police start arresting the kids that are at that in the park that he established, where he erected, where the Alfred Pennyworth Foundation bought some land and made a park for the homeless kids in the city. The police blame all the rioting that was going on, even though some of the police went undercover and actually did all the property damage and the rioting. And they blamed it on the kids, and they want to start arresting the kids that are seeking sanctuary in the park that Dick Grayson created with his Alfred Pennyworth Foundation. But very conveniently, Oracle got the pictures and, had cameras everywhere. And through her use of the internet and hacking skills, she got evidence that it was actually these police officers that were working under Commissioner McLean that were actually the cause of all the violence. It's, again, very conveniently wrapped. That part is very convenient. I mean, it's very easy to root out the corruption. It seems, I would say this some people will think this is more of I would say it's a constructive criticism. Some people are very hard on Tom Taylor, and they are going to say, look, this is far too convenient, as if cops are this stupid, making cops look this corrupt, this bad, setting up kids in a park. This is forced writing. This is it can feel a little bit like that in a way, but then the flip side of it, this is a feel-good comic. This is Nightwing. This comic book continues to embody hope, but at the same time, it's very conveniently wrapped up. You know, there's moments where Dick Grayson just, this one cop says to Dick Grayson, "You may need to accept that you're not in control of every situation, Mr. Grayson." And of course, at the end, Dick Grayson says the same thing to the cop when the cop is found, his fellow cops are found to be corrupt. "You may need to accept that you're not in control of every situation, Commissioner McLean." So again, kind of a little bit tropey, kind of convenient wrap up, but it's feel good and it puts a smile on your face. And he's in love with Barbara Gordon, and we know we're going to probably get a wedding at issue 100. We're going to get some payoff here. This comic book puts a smile on your face, and I think that it continues to be fun, and the cover is great with Barbara, with Batgirl, with Nightwing under her, looking over the city of Bloodhaven. This, I have fun with this issue. I like it. I know what the people who are frustrated with it are saying, uh, but I don't know. Even if you're pessimistic about this title, I just think I choose to enjoy it. I'm having a lot of fun with this, and it's hard not to love Dick Grayson and Barbara Gordon, Bruno Redondo's art. I just think that this is a comic book that if you want to feel good about yourself and good about the world, and that hope is not lost, and doing the right thing will lead to a better tomorrow, you can read Nightwing, and that's why this comic is what how Tom Taylor isn't really succeeding to the extent that I'd like in Superman Son of Kal-El. He's succeeding to the extent that I need him to on Nightwing. And so I really enjoyed this issue, and another great comic for the week. What about you?
Yeah, I don't even have that criticism. You say it's convenient. I say you're talking about Dick Grayson, who's been around the block at Bloodhaven many, many times. He knows how corrupt it is. And you're talking about the genius that is Barbara Gordon. Of course, they know that Blockbuster's going to try to pull strings. We know that Blockbuster, thinks that he controls the mayor's office. We haven't really explored, although this is the first time we actually see Dick Grayson's supposed sister here. We haven't really explored that, but Blockbuster believes he has the mayor under his thumb. Killed the previous mayor, deputy mayor, supposedly his Nightwing's sister is in charge. So he's got the whole city wired, right? He's got it dialed in. So of course they're going to have their own cameras. Of course they're going to have the foresight to know that, okay, who are they going to send to do this vandalizing? Of course it's going to be cops. So I actually loved it. And I love that he got to turn the tables because, I mean, like it or not, in this country, at least in the United States, we've had, all kinds of stories of corrupt law enforcement, some groups that have infiltrated law enforcement. For whatever reason, law enforcement just draws that sort of personality. People that like to be above the law and then bend it to their own devices. So it's all too realistic in my mind. And I loved having the tables turned, and I love the fact that Tom Taylor got to have Dick Grayson throw those words right back in Commissioner McLean's face. You're right. I mean, it is somewhat cathartic and somewhat feel good. But at the end of the day, the best parts of the story, as much as I kind of enjoyed that, seeing those corrupt police officers get their comeuppance, the best part of the story is the revelation. Well, first of all, seeing Heartless get his butt kicked by Blockbuster. And, it's always great when villains are, damaging each other, sort of soften them up for Nightwing at the end of the day. And then the revelation that, yeah, he's more machine than man, apparently, it looks like. I mean, they pull the sleeve back and they're going to plug a USB drive into him, but he has plenty of other. He's got USB-C, he's got USB-B, he's got HDMI, he's got digital display. He's got all these different kind of ports. I can just imagine Bruno Redondo looking up computer port and getting all these different visuals to see what he can use to plug into Heartless. So yeah, definitely. I mean, is he even a man? Is he a cyborg? Like, what's going on? So that's very intriguing. And yeah, he's stealing all these hearts from people so that he can use them himself to keep himself, so he can keep himself going. So that's very interesting. When you said you were going to say the same thing you always say, I thought you were going to talk about the pacing and how it tends to be a little on the slower side for Nightwing. I don't know what it is. I mean, we get great character moments, but it does. If I have any complaint, said it doesn't move a little faster.
Yeah.
Although, that being said, this was a relatively fast-paced issue. We did get, more of a chunk of story than we've had in previous ones. But when you look at his Superman Son of Kal-El, which I feel like he gets more criticism for, although there was tons of criticism about Bruno Redondo's choices for who he put on the cover of this that I thought were just absolutely just ridiculous and out of place, those criticisms. But regardless, I feel like Superman Son of Kal-El is moving along a little faster than this. But yeah, I saw people complaining, oh, how come there's no Duke Thomas on the cover of Nightwing? Duke Thomas hasn't been in Nightwing. So if you want to know why Bitewing is on the cover and not Duke Thomas, like, whatever. I mean, everybody's gonna
Yeah.
love who they love, and if Duke Thomas is your favorite Signal, is your favorite DC character, then hey, that's great. Um, the fact of the matter is we haven't seen Duke Thomas in a lot of books, and that should be your criticism, and you should direct that criticism toward DC editorial, not toward these guys who, I mean, if anything, Tom Taylor and Bruno Redondo, I mean, these guys did the Suicide Squad with maybe the most diverse and representative team ever in a Suicide Squad book. These are wrong people to be calling out for, lack of diversity. I honestly, frankly, feel Duke Thomas is a boring character, and I don't need to read any stories about Duke Thomas. But maybe that's a valid point that this person is pointing out. Hey, I need more Duke Thomas stories. I need someone to actually develop them. I feel like Scott Snyder brought him onto the table and then never did anything worthwhile with him. He's not an interesting character. I would argue that Jace Fox has been more developed than Duke Thomas has.
Yeah.
So if you have a complain to DC editorial about that. Don't complain that Bruno Redondo didn't put Duke Thomas on the cover of a comic he's never appeared in.
Yeah.
All the people that are on the cover, it's a Brady Bunch style cover. If you haven't seen it, they've all appeared in the book. They've all been in Nightwing issues. Duke Thomas has not. So anyway, I'll get off my soapbox about people picking on Tom King because he doesn't deserve it. Neither does Bruno Redondo. These guys are doing a fantastic job. If you want to complain, tell them to write. I don't want to say write faster, but give them more pages so we can get bigger chunks of story in these Nightwing issues. So anyway, on to the last book we're going to talk about in detail. It's another big special 48-page Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen's boss, Perry White. So obviously it's a Perry White one shot. The two main stories are written by the same creative team that brought us the Jimmy Olsen maxi series. So we have Matt Fraction as the writer, Steve Lieber on art, Nathan Fairbairn on colors, and Clayton Cowell on letters. Then there's a reprint from Action Comics number 461 from April 1976, The Toughest Newsboy in Town. It's basically the origin of Perry White. It's from writer Elliot S. Maggin. Kurt Swan does the art, the legendary Kurt Swan. Tex Blaisdell on the colors. And then from Action Comics number 436, March 1974, which technically, you talk March 1974, this book came out. That's the month I was born, the month and year I was born. But what's so interesting about this story, it's called The Super Cigars of Perry White. It's probably my favorite story in this book. It is so much fun. It feels so Silver Age, but technically it's Bronze Age. Silver Age ended in the 1970s. There wasn't one event like the beginning of the Silver Age was Showcase number 4 with the Barry Allen Flash. It was more of a subtle shift from the Silver Age to the Bronze Age, but most people agree it was 1970 that it happened, kind of a shift throughout that year. But man, if this doesn't feel like a Silver Age story, that's also written by Elliot S. Maggin. Again, the legendary Kurt Swan on art, Vince Coletta on the inks. And then there's Old Men Talking in Bars, which is a reprint from a Superman 80-page giant from 2011, written by Neil Cled. Dean Haspel, Joe Infernari, and John J. Hill are listed. I'm not sure. I think probably Neil and Dean co-wrote it, and Joe Infernari did the art, and then John J. Hill's a designer or a letterer, so he must have done the letters. And then finally, from Superman number 18, just a couple years ago, December 2019, the Truth issue. We only get an excerpt from it, just that really poignant scene between Clark and Perry White with no words. Brian Michael Bendis was the writer. Gorgeous art by Yvonne Reese and Joe Prado. Alex Sinclair does the colors. Dave Sharp on letters. So this is very much focused, as you can tell by the title, on Perry White. So the first story is just kind of in Perry White's own words. He's narrating what it means to be the editor of the Daily Planet, and how he wrote the headline, or his reporters wrote the headline. The Daily Planet reported over and over and over, thousands of times, Superman saves Metropolis. And what's interesting is the double page spread, they find different ways to say the same thing over and over. City endures, Superman sighted, Superman protects Metropolis, Superman saves Metropolis, city again, saved by Superman. Like all these different ways of saying the same thing. And then at the end, during an alien invasion, the city gets to return the favor and protect Superman and save Superman. So that's a really fun story. The second one is more of a Jimmy Olsen story, kind of leaning into the idea that Jimmy Olsen's kind of a walking disaster, but shows sort of the more fatherly side of Perry White, and how he kind of looks out for Jimmy and sees him as somewhat of a son. Then the toughest newsboy Legion in town, one of the reprints, like I said, basically is Perry telling his origin, how he got his job at the Daily Planet as a reporter to his grandkids. My favorite story is Super Cigars of Perry White. So Perry, along with Superman, helps to save some aliens on a planet from some invasion or what have you. And unbeknownst to Perry, they give him a gift. They give him cigars that, while he's smoking them, give him superpowers. And throughout the course of the story, he doesn't realize why he's getting superpowers. But he's like almost omnipotent, more powerful than Superman. So while he's happens to be smoking a cigar, he's like, well, if I have these powers, pretty much anything I wish I can do, I wish to know how I got these powers. And then he has this vision of, when he smokes the cigars, he has these powers and helps Superman on various missions and what have you. But unfortunately, once he learns of how he has the powers, he only has one cigar left. So he puts it in his safe for safekeeping to use for a rainy day. I don't know that he ever used it. But it would be great if some writer out there reads this and then does a story about Perry using his last cigar in present day. It would be pretty fun.
That would be.
Yeah,
Grant Morrison will tell that story.
yeah, it'd be yeah, it'd be fun. The Old Man Talking in Bars is basically Perry and Wildcat comparing stories. They have a lot in common and they find some common ground, so that one's pretty interesting. And then, yeah, like I said, the excerpt without any dialogue, except just some context. Superman having a conversation with Adam Strange. And again, I thought, as much as I didn't like the fact that Brian Michael Bendis had Superman reveal his secret identity, this was a good moment and felt very, very realistic of what Perry's reaction would be when Clark revealed his identity to him. So, yeah, fun story. If you're a Superman fan, probably want to pick this up. What do you think, Rocky?
Yeah, my favorite stories is my favorite artist of all time, just because it's in my heart, is Kurt Swan, followed by Darwin Cook. But I feel my first comic books were Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes and Superman, and Kurt Swan was the artist, and so I was always a Kurt Swan fan. I was never a Jack Kirby fan. And I just like I just love Kurt Swan's style of art, and his collaborations with Vince Coletta. Man, it's just, I mean, I just love them. And just you could tell that this the Super Cigar story is particularly good, because you can tell they don't show the cover. I wish I would have Googled it, because the style of storytelling, even at the tail end of the at the beginning of at the tail end of the Silver Age, beginning of the Bronze Age, they'd come up with a ridiculous cover, and the cover probably has Perry White having superpowers, and they said, okay, here's the cover, Perry White's flying, now write a story around it. And then, and then Elias Magny would do just that. And so, of course, you got these superpowered cigars, which were gifted to Perry White because he helped Superman help these mutant kids, and as a gift to Perry White, they're going to give him these superpowers through his cigars. And it's such a typical. It's exactly the type of story that that were so common back then, and it's you know, nowadays these types of stories would never be written, because they're just, our sense of storytelling. We want We want more sophisticated stories with a little bit more plot and a little bit more substance to them we want less of this fantastical, what you could call fantastical almost nonsense. But it's funny, growing up, I just love stories like this because they were just so good. But those are the ones that stand out for me. Uh, I do. I actually enjoyed Matt Fraction's Jimmy Olsen run to a point. I thought that when Matt Fraction wrote Jimmy Olsen, he was writing Jimmy Olsen just as Greg Rucka was doing his 12 issue Lois Lane series at the same time that Brian Michael Bendis was actually doing the his Superman run that ultimately showed Perry White, hugging Clark upon the big, the truth revealed, the secret identity revelation. Well, the story is actually reprinted here where it was actually one of the more funny stories with Jimmy Olsen, where Jimmy Olsen is actually revealed as in the story called Force Manure. Jimmy Olsen is criticized by Perry White for costing the Daily Planet so much money in insurance, but much to Perry White's delight, the accountants at the Daily Planet, led by Leon, another character that has disappeared, a Bendis incarnate character that has disappeared, went back to Earth 3 that we've never heard from again. It's pointed out that, well, even though Jimmy Olsen cost the Daily Planet a lot of money and the insurance premiums keep going up because of Jimmy Olsen's crazy adventures with Superman, the fact is Jimmy Olsen makes the Daily Planet. He's the number one income earner for the Daily Planet because of his social media presence, because he's got apparently a very influential YouTube channel, and and Twitch and everything else on social media. So it was,
Yeah, well, they say everybody wants to tune in to see what disaster he's
yeah,
going to get
exactly.
into next.
Yeah,
So it's
there's a
fantastic.
lot of funny. Like Matt Fraction, actually, his Superman run, ultimately his Jimmy Olsen 12 issue Jimmy Olsen. So it ended with Jimmy Olsen actually saving the Daily Planet from a Lex Luthor takeover, because it's revealed that Jimmy Olsen's family is actually linked to Lex Luthor's family in the early history of Metropolis, and 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 in fact, it's revealed that Jimmy Olsen actually inherited billions of dollars, and Lex Luthor didn't want him to discover that. And I'm oversimplifying it. Suffice to say, Jimmy Olsen made a deal that he would give Lex Luthor back a large part of the empire that he inherited, but he only wanted to he wanted to at least save the Daily Planet and keep the Daily Planet out of Lex Luthor's hands, and that's sort of like the deal that was made. And so, so technically Jimmy is Perry White's boss, which is ironic enough, which is kind of, it ended on that kind of funny note. But in any event, it's probably a highly underrated series that Matt Fraction's Jimmy Olsen run. It's because it's a Silver Age, it's a 12 issue Silver Age story, but told with modern day sensibilities. And it didn't really satisfy everyone, and I had some issues with it as well. But it was nice that they incorporated this story for Perry White. Odd choice for Perry White, but it's nice to see him getting some love. It's kind of, I'm a little surprised at that curious choice of all the characters DC would focus on. It's Perry White, but I have to admit, it brought back the feels for me for the nostalgia of Kurt Swan.
Yeah, and you're 100% right about that. That cover for Action Comics number 436. So what's interesting, I just recently bought that issue because I was missing it from my Action Comics run, and I think maybe at Phoenix Comic Con last month, somebody probably had it in their dollar bin. And basically, Superman's looking out the window of the Daily Planet, and Perry's zooming up from below, flying, and Superman's saying, "This is a job for," and then Perry White finishes the sentence by saying, "Perry White," and
Yeah.
he's flying very fast toward a plane in the distance that's falling out of the sky. So yeah, absolutely fantastic, and feels very, very Silver Age, as I said. So, all right. In addition to those books, there are a couple of other single issues that are out that we typically don't cover. So, the Earth Prime miniseries, Earth Prime number 6, Heroes Twilight, is out this week. Scooby Doo, Where Are You, number 116 is also out this week. And then there is one collection. It's a hardcover Nightwing Fear State from Tom Taylor, Tini Howard, Robbie Rodriguez, Cian Torme, Christian Duce is out this week as well. So that's going to do it for our DC Spotlight. Just a quick reminder, don't forget to tune in on Wednesday, tomorrow, if you're listening on the day this is released, for our New Comics Wednesday, which is a spoiler-free look at some Marvel and independent books that are going to be out this week. I think I have some interviews coming up this week, but they haven't been confirmed yet. So stay tuned for that. Don't forget, if you're listening on audio only, to go over to YouTube and subscribe to Rocky's channel, Comic Boom, Comic Space Boom, exclamation point to find it. Like this video, subscribe, ring the notification bell. You guys know how it works. If you're checking us out on YouTube and you want to be sure not to miss any of the Comic Source content, just go to your favorite podcasting app or platform on your smart device, do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. Numbers have been doing really, really well. I know that I've slipped way, way behind on Spawn. I'm trying to find time to go back and record huge amounts of it. It feels daunting at this point, but I'm hoping to get back to it at some point. So
yeah, I've had some readers, I've had some comments on YouTube. They want me to collaborate with you further on Spawn, and I said I just don't have the time. But it's like,
yeah,
because
so,
I direct them to your podcast, so the Comic Source podcast, because I know that it's gotten some love. So it's good to hear that it's popular. So hopefully you'll be able to pick it up.
Yeah, I mean, I was traveling a lot, and that got me out of the sort of the habit of doing it. And to be honest, I'm getting more than 4 hours of sleep a night. I'm sleeping like 6 hours a night, and those 2 hours are the 2 hours that I would do Spawn. And I'm just not as young as I used to be, and I'm finding that I feel so much healthier getting 6 hours instead of 4 hours of sleep. So
For sure.
I'm trying to find time. I'm trying to find time, though. I promise everybody. So anything else to add, Rocky, as we're winding down here?
No, just to anyone watching, if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to leave a comment. What was your favorite comic book of this week? For myself, I think I'm going to go. It's you know what? It's a two-way tie for me. I'm going to go with World's Finest and Black Adam. What do you? What are your
Wow.
choices?
Wow, it's such a tough choice. Black Adam, yeah, really good. World's Finest has my favorite moment, but can I give the whole? I thought Void Song was really. I think Void Song comes in a very, 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 very close second to the Flash. The Flash. I mean, Jeremy
Good
Adams.
choice. I can't disagree. I could have a four-way tie for first almost.
Yeah,
it was a good week.
Yeah, I mean, again, Young Justice was good. Night, yeah, you can't go wrong. Pick up some DC Comics. Leave some comments below, like Rocky said, and tell us what you thought was the best. We appreciate you guys tuning in as always. Appreciate the support, and we'll talk to you next time.
See you later.